Chapter 2267. In the end, the 9 heavens 10 earth space slashing ring was won by Peng Changkong for 8,000 clan merit points. This price was a little high, but not by much. The first treasure was extraordinary and was auctioned for a good price, which opened up a good start for the auction. Striking while the iron was hot, the second auction item was presented. The second auction item wasn't as valuable as the 9 heavens 10 earth space slashing ring, but the difference wasn't too big. It was also auctioned for a few thousand clan merit points. It was difficult for many people to obtain a few clan merit points, but it wasn't difficult for some people to obtain them as long as they were willing to work hard and risk their lives. Everyone in the Yuan spirit battlefield could more or less take out a few hundred clan merit points. Those who dared to participate in the auction more or less had some capital. It was still possible for them to take out a few thousand clan merit points. The first auction items were mainly auctioned by the great emperors in the hall because the value of these items couldn't arouse the interest of the people in the wing room, except for the 9 heavens 10 earth space slashing ring. The auction was in full swing. Soon, the 10th auction item was auctioned off. There was no pattern to the auction in the Yuan city. It might be held once every few decades, or it might be held hundreds of years apart. Just like this auction, it had been more than 100 years since the last one. The people who held the auction had prepared a large number of treasures. In addition, they also accepted other people's auctions. Chu Mu didn't bid because up until now, he hadn't seen anything useful to him. However, when he saw others bid, he was a bit surprised. He was surprised at the amount of merit points these people had. One had to know that Chu Mu had obtained tens of thousands of clan merit points because he was ranked 6th in the Grand Alliance tournament and 1st in the Heavens Pride roll. If not, he would probably only have a few hundred clan merit points. In such an auction, even if he fancied something, he wouldn't be able to afford it. When it came to the 50th auction item, the people in the wing room finally bid. However, they were all great emperors. The sovereign realm experts still didn't make a sound. Then, the 51st auction item was presented. The auction item this time is a cultivation technique, a special cultivation technique. The auctioneer Muing smiled and said, "This cultivation technique is called the Imperial Spirit Art. Everyone here is knowledgeable. Once you hear the name, you should know what it is." Muing flattered everyone, making them feel very comfortable. This imperial spirit art has reached the little sovereign realm. It was created by our human race's almighty after comprehending the god race's profound arts. It contains the essence of the god race's profound arts, but it's suitable for all races to cultivate. It can cultivate pure mental energy and control all kinds of secret treasures, making it stronger. Mu Ying explained simply. It was easy to understand. The imperial spirit art was similar to the imperial sword technique to a certain extent. The starting bid for the imperial spirit art is 3,000 clan merit points. Each bid must be at least 100 points. Let the bidding begin. Mu Ying's voice rang out along with the sound of the gavel. 3,100. Someone immediately bid. 4,000. Shen Jia increased the price. The voice came from a room. This spirit control art was something that even lesser sovereign realm experts could cultivate and use. 5,000. The price soared again, and it was still from the people in the room. 10,000. Before the crowd could even react in shock, a soft voice drifted over. It came from a higher level room. That was the room for sovereign realm experts. This was the first time a sovereign realm expert had made a bid. The great emperors in the hall were excited. Even though great emperors could be found everywhere in the primordial spirit battlefield, sovereign realm experts were still high and mighty. Since a sovereign realm expert had made a bid, the majority of the great emperors could only keep their mouths shut. "Senior, this imperial spirit art is also useful to me. I bid 11,000. In a room, an emperor realm expert made a bid again, shocking everyone. However, Since this person was in the room, he either had an extraordinary identity or was listed on the Earth Fiend list. It wasn't strange that he dared to bid against a sovereign realm expert. In an auction, the highest bidder wins. I bid 12,000. The sovereign realm expert made a bid again. From his indifferent tone, no one could tell whether he was happy, angry, or sad. The price of more than 10,000 clan merit points made many people shrink back. 12,000 going once. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher? Mu Ying's mellow voice sounded. 13,000. The moment the new price appeared and the voice rang out, countless gazes landed on him. A low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. An Emperor Realm expert who isn't in the room actually dares to bid against a sovereign realm expert in the hall. Seeing the person who made the bid, everyone was shocked and whispered among themselves. Brother Chu. Qin Shiyue was even more shocked. That's right, the person who made the bid of 13,000 clan merit points was Chu Mu. He felt that this imperial spirit art was useful to him. This person is merely a low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. But he actually has more than 10,000 clan merit points. How shocking. What they didn't know was that Chu Mu already had several tens of thousands of clan merit points before coming to the primordial spirit battlefield. After coming to the primordial spirit battlefield, he had earned more clan merit points by killing gods. A low-level first-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 5 clan merit points. A mid-level first-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 10 clan merit points, and so on. A peak first-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 25 clan merit points. A low-level second-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 40 clan merit points, and a peak second-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 80 clan merit points. A low-level third-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 100 clan merit points, and a peak third-step Emperor Realm expert was worth 180 clan merit points. In the past few months, Chu Mu had killed more than a dozen first-step Emperor Realm experts, including first-step and second-step Emperor Realm experts. Thus, he had earned more than 1,000 clan merit points. More than 50,000 clan merit points were enough for Chu Mu to bid for the Imperial Spirit Art. 13,000 clan merit points. This was a high price. Junior is so bold, the Imperial Spirit Art is yours. The Sovereign Realm expert's voice sounded neither too fast nor too slow. No one else made a bid, and the Imperial Spirit Art was now Chu Mu's. The items obtained from the auction could be collected now or collected after the auction ended. Chu Mu, however, was extremely interested in the spirit-controlling art. Thus, he immediately went to pay the corresponding clan merit points and obtain the spirit-controlling art. After receiving the Imperial Spirit Art, Chu Mu sent his consciousness into the Imperial Spirit Art to accept the inheritance. Very soon, he memorized the contents of the Imperial Spirit Art in detail. As for the jade stone that recorded the Imperial Spirit Art, it shattered into pieces. Chu Mu began to comprehend the Imperial Spirit Art. With his amazing comprehension ability and understanding of the God Clan's techniques, it was not difficult for him to comprehend the Imperial Spirit Art. Soon, Chu Mu had comprehended the surface of the Imperial Spirit Art, and he continued to deepen his comprehension. At the beginning, Chu Mu felt that there was nothing special about the Imperial Spirit Art, but as his comprehension deepened, Chu Mu gradually felt that there was something special about this Imperial Spirit Art. Although the Imperial Spirit Art contained some of the essence of the God Clan's techniques, and it also cultivated spiritual power, the most important aspect of the Imperial Spirit Art was its ability to control objects. This was the most important aspect of the Imperial Spirit Art. The auction continued, and Chu Mu only diverted a small part of his attention to deal with it. The majority of his attention was immersed in comprehending the Imperial Spirit Art. The further the auction went, the higher the price of the auction items became. However, Chu Mu did not bid again because they were not of much use to him. The great emperors in the private rooms all made their bids, and even the sovereigns followed suit. As more and more sovereigns made their bids, the others were reduced to mere background characters. In terms of wealth, how could they compare to sovereigns? Moreover, most of the items that sovereigns were interested in were not suitable for those below the sovereign realm. There were more than 1,000 items in this auction, and it took a total of 3 days to finish. In these 3 days, Chu Mu's comprehension of the imperial spirit art had reached a relatively high level. The only thing he lacked was a real cultivation session. After all, it was not suitable for cultivation in the auction venue. Once the auction ended, Chu Mu bade farewell to Qin Shirihue and left quickly. He planned to find a quiet place to cultivate the imperial spirit art. As a place for experts of the various races in the origin realm to recuperate, the facilities in the origin city were very complete. After paying a certain amount of clan merit points, Chu Mu obtained a quiet and safe room for seclusion. When a human cultivator reached the great emperor level, they would restrain their divine consciousness and stimulate their spiritual power. After that, they would passively increase their spiritual power and strength. The God clan, on the other hand, cultivated spiritual power. The imperial spirit art was created by comprehending the God clan's techniques. Cultivating the imperial spirit art would also allow one to cultivate spiritual power. To put it simply, if a great emperor of the human race were to cultivate the imperial spirit art, in addition to their own soul energy, they would also cultivate their own mental energy. Naturally, this mental energy would not be able to gather the power of heaven and earth like the divine race, but it could be used to drive treasures and so on. It had amazing uses. However, the imperial spirit art still contains some of the essence of the God clan's techniques. Furthermore, the great emperor of the human race had spiritual power. Although spiritual power and spiritual power were similar, they were also different and difficult to coexist. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for a great emperor of the human race to succeed in cultivating the imperial spirit art. Chu Mu was different. Although he was a great emperor of the human race, the technique he cultivated was completely different from other humans. It was based on the sword principle and integrated the martial arts essence of the Yuan race, God clan, and demon race. Finally, he condensed the great true wheel. Chu Mu's spiritual power was even purer than the God clans of the same level. Therefore, to him, the most difficult threshold of the imperial spirit art was not difficult at all and was easily achieved. In just a short day, Chu Mu had successfully cultivated the imperial spirit art. The power of the imperial spirit art was different from the power of the great true wheel, but the two were similar and could be transformed at will. In comparison, the power of the imperial spirit art was more active. Chu Mu tried to circulate the truth-seeking technique and the imperial spirit art at the same time. This was not difficult for him who could multitask. As expected, when he circulated the two techniques at the same time, two spiritual powers of the same origin, but different origin, appeared at the same time. Chapter 2268. The chaotic void was filled with endless rays of light. Suddenly, a storm seemed to sweep over from nothingness. Like a tidal wave, countless rays of light descended upon the battlefield of the Yuan spirit. In the short span of 10 breaths, the density of the starlight rays on the battlefield of the primordial spirit had soared by several times. The star beasts seemed to have been nourished and became more active. They roared one after another, louder than the other. The star tide is here again. Looking at the intensity this time, I'm afraid it will trigger a star beast tide. In the depths of the Yuan city, the demigod sovereign who was secretly overseeing opened his eyes and looked at the chaotic void. It was as if he had seen through the mysteries of the universe. Immediately, he transmitted his voice to the sovereign realm experts in the Yuan city, explaining the situation and mobilizing them immediately. It was a mess. The sovereign realm experts were extremely efficient. They passed down the orders one by one. Soon, everyone in the Yuan city was mobilized. There were a total of 12 strongholds in the Yuan city. Once a star beast tide broke out, the 12 strongholds would bear the brunt. The strongholds were very important. Normally, they would store a lot of resources. Moreover, it was also related to the reputation of the Yuan city. Guarding the strongholds became a mission. The way to guard the strongholds was very simple and direct. It was to head to a stronghold and kill the attacking star beasts to obtain the corresponding merit points. This was different from clan merit points. In the end, the rewards would be given according to the merit points. The merit points themselves could also be exchanged. Soon after, 12 streaks of light shot through the air. In an instant, they landed in the 12 strongholds and turned into huge stone tablets that stood on the ground majestically. Chu Mu had just come out of seclusion when he heard the news that the star tide was coming and would trigger a star beast tide. He was very shocked. He wasn't familiar with the star beast tide at all. However, this didn't hinder his understanding. A beast tide would definitely be a huge number of star beasts attacking. He had experienced similar things before. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu directly accepted the mission and received a merit token to guard the 7th stronghold. After it recognized him as its master, he quickly left the Yuan city. A bright ray of light broke through the sky and flew towards the 7th stronghold. Chu Mu cultivated the imperial spirit art in a short period of 10 days. Furthermore, he further modified it to make it more suitable for himself. The modified imperial spirit art could no longer be called the imperial spirit art, but the imperial spirit sword art. The difference of a single word caused a huge change to the core of this cultivation technique. It was completely different. The reason why Chu Mu was able to make such changes in such a short time was because of his great power of understanding and his deep understanding of the deity clan's methods. It could be said that in the entire human clan, few people could compare with Chu Mu in terms of understanding of the deity clan's methods, because they didn't have deity clones. The matchless ship was extremely fast, and after half a day, Chu Mu arrived at the 7th stronghold. A large crowd had gathered in the 7th foothold. Some of them were cultivators who originally belonged to the 7th foothold. After the auction ended, they returned to the 7th foothold. Some of them had rushed over from Yuan City after receiving the mission of guarding the foothold. A large number of cultivators had gathered in the foothold. Their auras were fluctuating and converging, appearing chaotic and powerful. Countless smoke signals were billowing in the distance. From outside the battlefield, rays of starlight were shooting over. Those rays of starlight were tens or hundreds of times denser than usual. They were clearly visible to the naked eye, and the power that they emitted was extremely terrifying. The defensive barrier of the stronghold was fully activated because the starlight rays that were amplified by 100-fold would cause harm to ordinary great emperors over time. Unless the great emperors were extremely powerful, possessed treasures, or had comprehended the great Tao of stars, there were very few people who could withstand the starlight rays. The star tide is getting stronger. It seems that the star beast tide is about to erupt. Places such as the primordial spirit battlefield and the primordial demon battlefield were filled with dense starlight. Usually, the density of the starlight was moderate, but like the waves of the sea, sometimes the starlight would suddenly become stronger due to various reasons. Some of them would become several times or even 10 times stronger, causing the star beasts on the battlefield to become more active. If the starlight was amplified by tens or hundreds of times, it would cause the star beasts to go berserk and attack one after another. They didn't have much intelligence, but they had the instinct to fight and kill. This instinct wouldn't target their own race, but other races. Wherever there were more races, they would go there. Their sensing ability would be significantly enhanced due to the star tide, and they would be able to sense where there were more living beings gathered. A single star beast might not be weak, but it wouldn't make people afraid. However, a group of star beasts, especially when they were in a berserk state and their strength was 30% stronger than usual, was like a disaster. Even a sovereign realm expert would pale in fright at the mention of it. Although gathering in the stronghold would attract the attack of a large number of star beasts, it was better than being scattered and torn apart by the berserk star beasts. At least the stronghold had some defensive facilities that could strengthen the defense. There was no specific pattern to the eruption of the star tide. The star beast tide was closely related to the star tide, so it was naturally the same. Every star beast tide was a disaster, but it was also an opportunity because it meant that the star beasts that one usually had to look for would come to their doorstep on their own. The prerequisite was that one had to have enough strength to hunt and kill the star beasts and protect one's own life. Not only that, killing astral beasts and guarding the strongholds would earn them merit points. As long as the strongholds weren't destroyed, they would be able to use the merit points they earned to exchange for treasures. For those who had a lot of merit points and were ranked very high, they would even be able to obtain rewards. However, only the top 10 in terms of points would be rewarded. There were many people in the stronghold, more than usual, but Chumu couldn't find anyone he knew. However, it didn't matter to him. He stood where he was casually, observing the situation around him while adjusting his breath. In the distance, smoke billowed, becoming more and more intense. Following that, the ground seemed to tremble slightly, but only those with sharp senses could feel it. Chu Mu's expression turned serious, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He looked ahead and felt that there was a large wave of star beasts attacking. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a tremor. Not long after, the tremor became more and more obvious. More people felt it, and all of them became vigilant. Their eyes shone brightly, and their auras fluctuated, filling the surroundings. The star beast tide is attacking. Everyone get ready. Go out of the stronghold and fight. Kill the star beasts. If you can't hold on, then retreat into the stronghold. A majestic voice rang out, and at the same time it entered everyone's ears. This was the Sovereign Realm expert overseeing the 7th stronghold. The stronghold itself had a protective shield, and it was currently in an active state. It could withstand the impact of the starlight rays and star beast tide. However, resisting the starlight rays was nothing. Resisting the impact of the star beast tide would increase the consumption of energy. Therefore, it was necessary for the cultivators guarding the stronghold to leave the protective shield and fight the star beasts outside. If they couldn't hold on, they would retreat into the protective shield to recuperate and disperse the starlight rays that entered their bodies. After that, they would leave the protective shield and continue to hunt the star beasts. If they couldn't hold on, they would retreat into the protective shield and use the shield to resist the impact of the star beasts. They would take the opportunity to kill the star beasts. Chu Mu followed the crowd out of the protective shield and stood tens of thousands of meters away from the shield, waiting for the arrival of the star beast tide. The tremor on the ground became more and more obvious. Smoke billowed, spreading out in all directions. Vaguely, everyone could see figures rushing over at an astonishing speed. Under the star beast tide, the star beasts would be more active than usual. They would also enter a berserk state, and their strength would be more than 30% stronger than usual. The star beasts were already strong to begin with, and if they were 30% stronger, they would be even more terrifying. Everyone's expression turned solemn as they prepared for battle. The star beasts charged forward like an army. Their physiques were strong, their speed was fast, and their bodies were huge. It was as if they didn't know the concept of exhaustion. They were like the most ferocious and elite knights charging forward. Their ferocious aura filled the sky, and the moment they appeared, it was a huge impact on everyone. As far as the eye could see, the figures of the star beasts were endless. They were like waves of starlight that came one after another. The terrifying aura caused some of the weaker great emperors to turn pale. However, the ones standing at the front were all third-step emperors, and each of them was powerful. The second-step and first-step emperors stood in the middle and at the back. At the very least, they were safer in the beginning. Chu Mu stood in the middle. He was a second-step emperor, and even though he was stronger than a third-step emperor, it was nothing in the face of such a situation. Taking a deep breath, Chu Mu circulated the truth-seeking technique, and the Great True Wheel started to revolve. Waves of energy flowed out from the Great True Wheel and flowed through Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu's cultivation wasn't limited to his meridians. There would be energy flowing through every part of his body. Compared to other cultivators, his cultivation was more comprehensive. The Star Beast army was only a few tens of thousands of meters away from the seventh stronghold. Based on the Star Beast's speed, they would be able to cross this distance in an instant. Kill! All of a sudden, a loud roar sounded. The third step emperors, standing at the front, all attacked. A huge sword light pierced through the sky, and thunder rumbled. Palm imprints fell like mountains, and dazzling light filled the air. Killing intent filled the air. Facing the attacks of a large group of third step emperors, the Star Beasts didn't seem to be affected at all. They charged forward fearlessly. Even though they didn't have much intelligence, they had strong battle instincts and knew how to dodge. However, under the influence of the star tide, the Star Beasts became more active and entered a berserk state. The advantage of this was that their strength increased by more than 30%. The disadvantage was that they charged forward fearlessly. Chapter 2269. The Star Beasts charged forward without any fear of death. The attacks of the third step Great Emperors arrived instantly. As they collided, shocking explosions resounded across the heavens and the earth. Light radiated in all directions. A portion of the Star Beasts were torn apart or smashed into pieces under the powerful attacks. However, there was still a portion of Star Beasts that endured the powerful attacks and charged forward. Their bodies were riddled with injuries that were so deep that their bones could be seen. However, they did not seem to be affected. Moreover, they continued to absorb the dense starlight rays to recover rapidly. The speed of their recovery was despairing. The third step Great Emperors did not only attack once. They attacked again and again, trying their best to kill the Star Beasts. At the very least, they wanted to injure the Star Beasts severely so that they would lose most of their fighting strength. However, the Star Beasts were not afraid of death. They charged forward. When the portion at the front died, the portion at the back immediately took their place. They did not stop charging forward as long as they were alive. After killing a few waves of Star Beasts, the army of Star Beasts at the back continued to charge forward and clashed with the Great Emperors. The real battle had begun. Rumbling sounds could be heard. Zhan Tian shook the ground as the various Great Emperors attacked the Star Beasts. The Star Beasts charged forward like a tidal wave. However, the Great Emperors of the various races were unable to do so as they were not an army or a soldier. They were either used to being alone or working in small groups. Now that things had happened so suddenly, they did not have the time to train their teamwork. They could only unleash their own strength and try their best to kill the Star Beasts. However, since they were able to cultivate to this stage, their intelligence was not bad. They knew that even if they took action in advance, their advantage would be very small. Hence, they had to split up the Star Beast army and reduce the size of the attack. Only then would it be more beneficial for them to unleash their strength. With everyone's hard work, and after paying a certain price, they finally split up the Star Beast army. After splitting up the Star Beast army, the momentum of the Star Beast army's charge was greatly reduced. Kill! Battle cries and shouts could be heard everywhere as powerful auras surged violently. Countless rays of starlight entered the bodies of the Star Beasts and the Great Emperors. Chu Mu could feel numerous rays of starlight entering his body, attempting to corrode and destroy his body. However, when they were struck by the power of the Grand True Wheel, they were all dispersed. The impurities and harmful parts were all expelled, while the beneficial parts were absorbed by the myriad heaven's starry swords in his body, gradually increasing the power of the swords. There was one difference between the celestial swords and the other celestial swords, and that was that the celestial swords contained the power of the great path of the stars, while the other celestial swords contained the power of the source. There was a difference, but it was undeniable that the celestial swords still possessed sufficient power. However, at this moment, Chu Mu didn't use the celestial swords. Instead, he used the celestial swords in his right hand and the celestial swords in his left hand. Facing the star beasts, Chumu wasn't afraid at all. Both of his swords were like swallows spreading their wings as they flew past in an instant. Two rays of sword light were parallel to each other. As they flickered, they intersected and turned into a cross. In an instant, 5 star beasts were sliced apart and died instantly. It was true that the star beasts possessed astonishing, self-healing abilities. However, after their bodies were sliced apart, they died quickly. This was their unique characteristic. The ones charging at the moment were all soldier-class star beasts. When the general-class star beasts arrived, they didn't care about the crowd. Naturally, there would be sovereigns to deal with them. The stronger the star beast, the fewer there would be. The soldier-class star beasts were divided into low class, middle class, and high class. Within each class, there were also low class, middle class, high class, peak class, and extreme class. Killing a low class star beast would give 1 merit point, killing a low class mid-class star beast would give 2 merit points, and so on. Killing a low class extreme class star beast would give 5 merit points. Reaching the middle class low class star beast would give 11 merit points, and each subclass would give 1 merit point. In other words, killing an extreme class star beast would give 15 merit points. Killing a high class low class star beast would give 21 merit points, and an extreme class star beast would give 25 merit points. Under the star tide, high class low stage star beast strength would increase by at least 30%. The originally powerful star beasts would become even more powerful. Although Chumu had the confidence to kill them, he would need a certain amount of time. In such an environment, there probably wouldn't be enough time. Therefore, Chumu set his sights on low and middle stage star beasts. Even if the low class and middle class star beast strength increased by 30%, they wouldn't be able to reach the level of a high class star beast. They wouldn't be a match for Chumu at all. He could kill them easily without using his full strength. However, there were many star beasts charging at him fearlessly. In such a situation, Chumu still had to be vigilant, raising his perception to the maximum. Everything in the surroundings was within his grasp. Unless he was surrounded by countless star beasts, it would be difficult for Chumu to be surrounded and fall into a dangerous situation. Chumu continued to attack and kill the star beasts. The might of the Heavenly Thunder Sword and Heavenly Wind Sword was astonishing. They pierced through and sliced through the star beasts. One after another, the star beasts died under Chumu's sword. Save me! A first-step Great Emperor had just killed a low-level star beast when a mid-level star beast appeared from the side and clawed at him with its sharp claws. Due to the difference in strength, the first-step Great Emperor couldn't dodge the attack at all. He could only watch as the sharp claws of the star beast grew bigger and bigger in front of his eyes. Suddenly, just when he thought that he was going to die, a stunning and sharp sword light flashed before his eyes. The sharp claws that were tearing at him also stopped in midair and fell. Thank you for saving my life. At this step, the Great Emperor's entire body trembled and cold sweat covered his face. He felt as if he had just escaped from the brink of death and was trembling all over. However, he quickly turned to look at the owner of the sword light and shouted at the back of the figure that was quickly disappearing into the distance. Although he didn't know who the other party was, the first-step Great Emperor still remembered the person's back. After saving a person, Chumu didn't mind and continued to kill the star beasts. In the 7th foothold, there was a huge black stone tablet. On the stone tablet, names appeared from top to bottom. After each name, there was a corresponding number. It was the merit points for killing the star beasts. Every merit point was increasing rapidly. There were a total of 100 names on the stone tablet. Each of them was shining with golden light and was very eye-catching. However, at this moment, no one was paying attention to them. Chumu wasn't among the 100 names. This was actually normal. One should know that there were many third-step Great Emperors guarding the 7th foothold against the star beasts. There were more than 1,000 of them. Most of them were stronger than Chumu. They could kill stronger star beasts and obtain more merit points. Unknowingly, Chumu and the other great emperors had killed their way into the group of star beasts. The sword light flickered continuously. Every ray of light was sharp and decisive. Chumu didn't check how many merit points he had. However, when he saw the battles of the other third-step great emperors, he realized that his merit points couldn't be compared to theirs. The Blood Sword Emperor, Dongshui, whom he had met once, was not far away. The blood-red sword light flickered and turned into hundreds of rays, covering a radius of a few thousand meters. All the star beasts within the radius of a few thousand meters wailed in pain. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Under the impact, it looked like a huge blood-red flower that was blooming. In an instant, all the star beasts within a few thousand meters died. The Blood Sword Emperor's merit points skyrocketed, and his ranking on the merit tablet increased by a few places. So strong! Chumu was shocked. At least a few hundred star beasts were killed in an instant. The strength of the Blood Sword Emperor, Dongshui, was too terrifying. The other third-step great emperors weren't as outstanding as the Blood Sword Emperor. After all, the Blood Sword Emperor was ranked 18th on the Earth Carnage ranking. My strength can't be compared to the Blood Sword Emperor, but I can be faster. Chumu muttered to himself. He held the sword with both hands and shook it violently. A tyrannical power burst out, and the sword light split. In an instant, a few star beasts were killed and cleared out. After that, Chumu focused, and a ray of golden light condensed around him. The light rapidly condensed and turned into a golden sharp sword. It was the All Heavens golden sword. A few star beasts pounced from all directions. Under the control of Chumu's Imperial God Sword Art, the All Heavens golden sword instantly flew out and turned into a ray of golden light. It was extremely sharp and pierced through a few star beasts in an instant. The All Heavens golden sword was already extremely sharp. Under the enhancement of the Tao of Gold, it was even more shocking. Immediately after, the second sword was condensed. It was the All Heavens wooden sword. With the help of Little Tian, Chumu quickly condensed the 5 All Heavens swords of gold: wood, water, fire, and earth. They revolved around him and killed the star beasts. Every All Heavens sword was imbued with a powerful Tao of gold and was extremely tyrannical. Under the control of Chumu's Imperial God Sword Art, the All Heavens sword turned into 5 rays of light of different colors and shuttled back and forth. They covered a radius of 100 meters and killed the star beasts below the high level easily. Even though the speed couldn't be compared to the Blood Sword Emperor, Dongshui, and the others, it was much faster than a portion of the third-step great emperors. Chumu stood on the spot and allowed countless star beasts to charge at him. However, they were all killed by the 5 All Heavens swords that he controlled with the Imperial God Sword Art. There were star beasts that had reached the high level that broke through the All Heavens swords and charged at Chumu. Chumu slashed out with the swords in his hands. Wind sword kill. Lightning sword kill. The green sword light and purple sword light pierced through the air and instantly tore apart the star beast that had reached the low level of the high level. With the All Heavens wind sword and All Heavens thunder sword in his hands, he acted as the second killing move. The 5 All Heavens swords of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth were distributed in a radius of 100 meters and acted as the first killing move. Under the coordination of the All Heavens swords, Chumu's merits increased rapidly. Chapter 2270. Roars filled the air, and they were filled with killing intent. Countless rays of light of different colors shot out from all directions, piercing through the void and intersecting with each other. It was like an inescapable net that no one could avoid. 5 rays of sword light of different colors shuttled back and forth within a radius of 100 meters. Wherever they passed, the star beasts fell to the ground and died. Fresh blood flowed everywhere. This scene attracted the attention of the other Emperor Realm experts, not far away. Who is this person? He's merely a low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. But his strength is not inferior to a low-level third-step Emperor Realm expert. No matter how talented he is, it's impossible. It must be related to his 5 swords. Those 5 swords must be extraordinary treasures. Immediately, the people who noticed Chumual thought that it was because of the 5 swords. This was possible. A few powerful treasures were indeed able to do this. However, the more powerful a treasure was, the more it required a powerful cultivation to be able to use it. There were a very small number of exceptions. The requirements for cultivation were relatively low, but they possessed power that far exceeded cultivation and were incomparably precious. Obviously, everyone thought that the 5 swords were one of those secret treasures. If I have such a secret treasure, I'll be able to unleash even more power. A trace of greed flashed through the eyes of a third-step Emperor Realm expert from the soldier tribe. The soldier tribe had a secret technique that allowed them to devour secret treasures for their own use. If he could obtain the 5 swords and devour them, his strength would definitely increase significantly. As he thought of this, the third-step Emperor Realm expert from the soldier tribe inched closer to Chumu. He was a mid-level third-step Emperor Realm expert, and his strength was tyrannical. His hands turned into 2 swords, one long and one short, as he killed the star beasts and slowly approached Chumu. Chumu noticed the approaching Emperor Realm expert, but he didn't care. In a battle like this, it was normal to get close to each other. However, Chumu soon felt that something was wrong. As the Emperor Realm expert from the soldier tribe slowly approached him, the high-level star beasts were also charging towards him. A portion of them coincidentally passed by the Emperor Realm expert and charged towards Chumu. Chumu immediately became vigilant and quickly distanced himself. The soldier race emperor was furious, but he did not intend to give up. Instead, he sped up and approached Chumu. At the same time, he brought a group of high-level star beasts with him. This scene did not attract the attention of others. After all, there were many star beasts, and they were constantly charging at them. They had to deal with them with all their might. "Sir, don't come near me," Chumu warned. However, the great emperor of the soldier race did not seem to have heard him and continued to do as he pleased. Chumu was enraged. He could tell that this immortal emperor of the soldier race was clearly up to no good. Since that was the case, with a single thought, the myriad heaven's 5 elements swords shone brightly as a frightening aura spread out and locked onto the immortal emperor of the soldier race. If he were to continue approaching, Chumu would unleash a thunderous strike. The immortal emperor of the soldier race, who was locked onto by the myriad heaven's 5 element swords, shuddered as a bone-chilling intent spread throughout his body. However, he was not afraid. Instead, he was delighted. The more he thought about the myriad heaven's 5 element swords, the more tempted he was. If he were to devour such power, his strength would definitely rise to another level. Since the other party had already sensed his hostility and was close enough, there was no need for him to hold back. In an instant, the immortal emperor of the soldier race turned into a streak of light as he swept past a star beast and charged towards Chumu. His terrifying killing intent locked onto Chumu. The strength of a mid-level third-step emperor was unleashed to its fullest. Golden sword kill. Wooden sword kill. Water sword kill. Fire sword kill. Earth sword kill. Without any hesitation, Chumu used the Imperial God Sword art to control the myriad heaven's 5 element swords and executed the 10th sword. A total of 5 swords slashed towards the immortal emperor of the soldier race. The power of the 10th sword was unleashed to its fullest. Every sword was extremely terrifying and could kill an ordinary low-level third-step emperor in a second. It could even threaten a mid-level third-step emperor. 5 rays of sword light of different colors shot out. 1 ray of golden light was incomparably condensed, capable of piercing through all toughness and was unstoppable. 1 ray of green energy was endless. 1 ray of blue energy was like an unceasing wave of impact, yet was incomparably sharp. One ray of red energy was even more tyrannical, violent, and scorching, capable of destroying everything. One ray of brown energy was as heavy as a mountain and as stable as the earth, instantly suppressing down. The immortal emperor of the soldier race was shocked and angry at the same time. He was shocked because the 5 swords were stronger than he had imagined. He was angry because a mere low-level second-step emperor had dared to attack him. Endless sword light. With a low roar, the immortal emperor of the soldier race's long and short swords brought about a terrifying cold storm that swept out in all directions and sliced through everything. In a head-on clash, the soldier race's mid-level third-step emperor realm strength was unleashed to its fullest. The star beasts that got close to the immortal emperor of the soldier race were sliced into pieces by the sword light. They couldn't be more dead. The 10th sword arrived and collided with the immortal emperor of the soldier race. Countless sparks flew out and mixed with the starlight rays. It looked even more beautiful. However, under this kind of beauty, there was a fatal danger. At the same time, some star beasts pounced towards Chu Mu and were killed by Chu Mu's wind and lightning swords. The endless sword light collided with the sword light of the 5 Dao swords. A terrifying storm swept out. The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race charged out from the countless sparks. His long and short swords turned into 2 streaks of light that pierced towards Huang Xiaolong. Chu Mu's arms shook as he slashed out with both swords. One of them turned into a green and the other purple, bringing with it a shocking sharpness and ferocity. Wind sword attack, lightning sword attack, another collision. Tyrannical energy surged out and Chu Mu was sent flying. His body felt like it was being torn apart, but his expression didn't change at all. Looking at the soldier race's emperor of the soldier race, he executed the imperial god sword art to the extreme. Little Tian, cooperate with me. Yes, master. Little Tian's tender voice was filled with seriousness. Suddenly, the 5 flying swords got close to each other. Metal begets water, water begets wood, wood begets fire, fire begets earth, and earth begets metal. The 5 elemental swords spun and suddenly released an incomparably bright light. Instantly, they got close to each other and merged into one. After merging, the sword became even bigger. It was a huge sword that released 5 different colors. It circled around and emitted a terrifying aura. Sharp, hot, heavy, continuous, endless, and endless. The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race was even more excited when he saw this. It turned out that the 5 swords could merge and become even stronger. Immediately, his desire to seize these 5 swords became even stronger. 11th sword, 5 elemental sword attack. After the 5 elemental swords merged into one, an even stronger aura rippled out. Instantly, it turned into a 5-colored light that descended with an unparalleled, killing intent. It was like a meteor that was descending. It was like a comet that was about to destroy the world. All of this happened in an instant. The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race's face changed. This sword made him feel the threat of death. That power made him shudder involuntarily. Stop! The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race roared out hurriedly. At the same time, he retreated rapidly. Both his long and short swords slashed out one after another, sending out streams of sword chi. However, no matter how many sword chi there were, they couldn't do anything to stop the 5 elemental sword attack. All of them collapsed under the might of the 5 elemental sword attack. Since Chu Mu had already made his move, there was no reason for him to stop. This soldier race's emperor of the soldier race had bad intentions at the start. At the end, he revealed his killing intent. Now that he saw that the situation wasn't right, he wanted to stop. How could there be such a simple thing in the world? The 5 elemental sword attack slashed out mercilessly. The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race's face was filled with shock. Realizing that it was difficult for him to retreat, his face darkened. He swore to himself as a formidable power surged out and covered his entire body. It turned into a sword-light tornado. His long and short swords seemed to have melted and disappeared rapidly. Following that, his aura started to climb up. The commotion attracted the attention of the other great emperors in the surroundings. They were all puzzled and shocked. "He's turning into a celestial soldier!" A knowledgeable third step great emperor exclaimed when he saw the transformation of the soldier race's emperor of the soldier race. Turning into a celestial soldier was the ability of the soldier race. It was also their final trump card. It could be said that it was their trump card to perish together with their opponent. They wouldn't use it normally. Many great emperors were both shocked and furious. At such a critical moment, they didn't use all their strength to kill the star beasts. Instead, they fought amongst themselves. Such behavior was truly disgusting. "Stop!" Just as the 5 elemental sword attack was about to reach the soldier race and the soldier race's emperor of the soldier race was about to turn into a celestial soldier, a majestic voice rang out. Along with that, a powerful aura descended. The surroundings went silent. All the star beasts froze. Then their bodies collapsed. Chumu felt as if he was being suppressed by an ancient mountain. He couldn't move at all. The soldier race's celestial soldier transformation was instantly stopped. The powerful 5 elemental sword attack was like snow being exposed to the sun. It disappeared in the blink of an eye and turned back into the 5 elemental sword. During the Star Beast Tide, infighting is strictly prohibited. Since it's your first offense, I'll give you a warning. If you do it again, you'll be killed without mercy. The majestic voice was filled with sternness and killing intent. It was undeniable that if anyone dared to fight amongst themselves again, they would end up in a miserable state. This was the wrath of a sovereign. The voice quieted down. The feeling of space being confined also disappeared. Chumu heaved a sigh of relief. However, he was still unhappy. In the end, he wasn't the one who had caused this. It was the soldier race's emperor who had caused it. However, it didn't make any sense. Only when one was strong enough would one have the right to fight for everything. "I'll remember you." The soldier race's emperor of the soldier race was terrified. If the sovereign hadn't intervened just now, he would have turned into a celestial soldier. No matter what happened after that, he would have died without a doubt. Therefore, his face was pale. He glared at Chumu fiercely. After leaving behind a sentence, he turned around and flew into the stronghold. Chumu snorted. Even if the soldier race didn't remember him, he would remember him. After the Star Beast Tide, he would find a chance to kill the soldier race. Then, Chumu killed a few nearby star beasts and flew back to the stronghold. The continuous killing, especially the battle with the soldier race's emperor of the soldier race, had used up most of his energy. He had to recover before coming back to kill star beasts. Chapter 2271. Countless star beasts continued to rush over from the front. The martial emperors of the various races continued to attack, engaging in a life and death battle with the star beasts. When they had expended too much energy and could no longer hold on, the martial emperors quickly retreated back to the stronghold and consumed pills to recover their energy. Then, they would leave the stronghold and kill more star beasts. Chumu retreated back to the stronghold and consumed some pills. The truth-seeking technique circulated rapidly, absorbing all the qi in the surroundings. The heaven and earth yuan qi was the main source of energy, mixed with other energy fluctuations. The great true wheel was like an ancient millstone, crushing everything that was disadvantageous to Chumu and turning it into pure energy. The martial emperor of the Bin tribe, who had returned to the stronghold earlier than Chumu, was also recovering his energy. However, his eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent as he stared at Chumu. Chumu could clearly feel the killing intent from the third step martial emperor of the Bin tribe. However, he ignored it because there was no need to. If he attacked again, he would definitely anger the sovereign. At that time, he would probably be killed. It wasn't worth it. Since that was the case, there was no point in glaring at each other. He might as well focus on recovering his energy and kill more star beasts. Even if he couldn't obtain any rewards in the end, he could still earn more contribution points to exchange for useful treasures. As for the star beast crystals, there was no time to excavate them, because if he was distracted, there was a high possibility that the star beasts would seize the opportunity to pounce on him. It was extremely dangerous. Up until now, the ground outside the stronghold was covered with star beast corpses that stretched for tens of thousands of meters. However, no one was excavating the star beast crystals. Perhaps I can let little Tian control the celestial star's sword to excavate the star beast crystals. Chu Mu was recovering his energy while looking at the piles of star beast corpses outside. He suddenly had an idea. The battle just now was urgent, and he didn't have much time to think. Now that he had some time, his mind started to work quickly. Those star beast crystals were also a huge amount of wealth. They were extremely useful to him. As his energy recovered rapidly, Chu Mu planned to make a move after he recovered to his peak. His gaze landed on the huge merit stele. The 100 names on the monument were so clear, shining with golden light. It was very dazzling. Ranked first was a cultivator called Thunderhell Emperor. It was unknown what race he was from, but his merit points were frightening. He had more than 150,000 merit points, which meant that he had killed at least 6,000 to 7,000 star beasts or even more. The person in second place was called Great Emperor Ma Tian, and he had more than 130,000 merit points. Ranked third was the Blood Sword Emperor, who had close to 130,000 merit points. Meanwhile, the number of merit points for the person in fourth place decreased drastically. It was only around 100,000 merit points. Of course, such a number of merit points was enough to make others look up to them. Chu Mu quickly scanned through each name. Soon he saw his own name. He didn't have an official title yet. Hence, the stone tablet was marked by his name. This was directly related to the information he left behind when he accepted the mission in the Origin City. He was quite surprised that his name was on the stone tablet. After all, his strength was only slightly stronger than the average low-level third-step Emperor Realm experts. There were at least 1,000 Emperor Realm experts present who were stronger than him. However, strength was one thing and killing star beasts was another. For example, Emperor A and Emperor B. Emperor A specialized in one-on-one battles, while Emperor B specialized in one-on-one battles. If Emperor A and Emperor B fought, Emperor A would win. However, if they competed to see who could kill the most star beasts, Emperor B would win. The Thunder Hell Emperor, who was ranked first on the merit stele, might not be stronger than the person in second place. However, he was much better at killing groups of people. Using the same logic, Chu Mu's strength wasn't comparable to those powerful third-step Emperor Realm experts. However, he wielded a sword in each hand and used the Imperial God Sword art to control the All-Heaven 5 Elements swords. His speed of killing star beasts was extremely fast, and his efficiency was very high. It was possible for him to be ranked on the merit stele. However, Chu Mu's ranking on the merit stele was very low. He was ranked 98, and he dropped again. 99. He dropped again. 100 places. Chu Mu looked at his merit points. He had more than 15,000 merit points. In the next breath, Chu Mu's name disappeared from the merit stele. He was replaced. My strength has recovered. It's time to kill star beasts. Chu Mu retracted his gaze and muttered to himself. He turned into a stream of light and left the stronghold. He appeared among the star beasts. His 2 swords vibrated and formed a cross-sword light. He killed a few star beasts instantly. Then, the All-Heaven 5 Elements swords appeared. They spun and sliced, covering an area of 100 meters. Seeing Chu Mu recover his strength so quickly, the Weapon Race Emperor was very surprised. The killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. Little Tian, form the All-Heaven Star Sword and see if you can dig out the beast crystals of the star beasts." Chu Mu said to little Tian, "Yes, master. I promise to complete the mission." Little Tian said seriously. Her young voice sounded very interesting. With the current God-controlling sword technique, Chu Mu could only control the 5 elemental swords at his current level. Any more, and he wouldn't be able to do anything. Luckily, he had the sword spirit Little Tian. However, with Little Tian's current strength, it would take some time to form the All-Heaven Star Sword. After 3 breaths, the All-Heaven Star Sword was successfully formed. Under the control of Little Tian, it turned into a stream of starlight and shot out. There were many star beast corpses in the surroundings. Wherever the starlight passed, it would break open the heads and dig out the beast crystals. It was then carried by the starlight to Chu Mu and into his spatial ring. At the beginning it was slow. However, as Little Tian got familiar with it, the speed became faster. However, it could only be done within 100 meters. The efficiency of collecting star beast crystals wasn't high, but it was better than nothing. As time passed, the number of star beast crystals in Chu Mu's spatial ring increased. There were low-grade to high-grade star beast crystals. In addition to the continuous increase of star beast crystals, Chu Mu's merit points were also increasing rapidly. Every time, it would increase by 100 points. However, no one knew when this battle would end. That was because the astral beasts seemed to have no limit. They kept charging over, wave after wave like a tide. The star beasts were constantly being killed. The great emperors guarding the stronghold couldn't be unharmed. There were still people dying. The general-level star beasts were blocked further away by the sovereigns. They were fighting and killing each other. Terrifying energy waves surged in all directions. The fighting didn't stop. Chu Mu returned to the stronghold to recover his strength before coming out again. This was a total of 4 times, and his name once again rushed onto the merit tablet. He charged into the top 90, and his merit points reached over 50,000. During this period, Chu Mu faced a life-and-death situation and suffered serious injuries. Fortunately, his life-saving ability was strong, and he managed to survive. He activated his rapid recovery ability and healed his injuries quickly. Chu Mu was already in such a state. Most of the great emperors who didn't have life-saving ability as strong as him died. Such a battle was like a meat grinder. Even if one was strong, they couldn't guarantee their survival. The number of third-step great emperors who died was not small. Although the losses were great, they were still able to resist the star beast tide outside the stronghold. This battle lasted for a few days. Chu Mu once again felt tired. Continuous battles. Even if his body was made of iron, it would be hard for him to endure. Even if he could endure it, his mind would feel tired. When one's mind was tired, it was easy to be distracted. A slight negligence would lead to death in such a battle. Fortunately, after a few days of high-intensity battles, the star beast tide seemed to have weakened. This was something that could be felt. Is the beast tide ending? It should be. Great. Everyone was overjoyed. The beast tide might be ending, but the star beasts are still coming. Everyone, don't let your guard down. Work hard and persevere. A voice sounded in everyone's ears, encouraging them. It was as if they were walking in a desert without any hope for a few days. When they were on the verge of death, they suddenly saw a patch of green in the distance. The sudden burst of energy was stronger than usual. Chu Mu was also very happy. It couldn't be helped. Such a battle was indeed too difficult. Although the harvest was great, it was also very dangerous. He also felt very tired. About half a day later, the last wave of star beasts finally arrived. All of them were high-level star beasts. The blood sword monarch slashed out with his sword. 1,000-meter long blood-red sword light turned into a crescent moon, slashing towards the star beast tide. The Thunder Prison great monarch was a human. He waved his lightning staff, and countless black lightning fell from the sky, turning into a lightning purgatory. However, the high-level star beasts were too powerful. If one wasn't a third-step Great Emperor, it was impossible to fight against them. The first-step Great Emperors could only retreat. Even the second-step Great Emperors had no choice but to retreat. Chu Mu retreated slightly. He focused his mind and used all his strength to execute the 5 Elements Sword Annihilation. The 5 Elements Sword Annihilation's power was shocking. It was enough to kill a mid-level third-step Great Emperor. It could also kill high-level star beasts. However, the 5 Elements Sword Annihilation consumed a lot of energy. With Chu Mu's current cultivation, he couldn't execute it more than a few times. After executing the 5 Elements Sword Annihilation 3 times and killing more than a dozen high-level star beasts, Chu Mu withdrew his sword and retreated into the stronghold. The rest of the battle was naturally left to the third-step Great Emperors. On the merit scale, Chu Mu's ranking was 83rd. It was quite high. His merit points had also exceeded 80,000. As for the star beast crystals, Chu Mu checked them, and a happy smile appeared on his face. After the last high-level star beast was killed, no more star beasts appeared. This meant that the star beast tide was over. It was finally over. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They had an impulse to collapse on the ground and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. Suddenly, there was a ripple in the void. Countless rays of starlight were pulled in and gathered together. They became denser and denser. As the countless rays of starlight were absorbed, a vague outline seemed to appear. Chapter 2272. The changes outside the Yuan spirit battlefield continued. But after a few days, the outline became clearer and clearer. No matter if it was the Yuan city or the God city, everyone was paying attention to the changes outside the Yuan spirit battlefield. They were waiting for the changes to end so that they could seize the opportunity and fight for the benefits. Other than paying attention to the changes, the losses and gains from the Battle of the Star Beast Tide were also calculated. On the Yuan city side, 2 of the 12 strongholds were destroyed and had to be rebuilt. The losses were huge. Close to 100,000 Emperor Realm experts and over 100 Sovereign Realm experts died. Such losses were truly disastrous. However, the gains weren't small either. There were over 1 million star beasts in the beast tide, and all of them died. A portion of the star beast crystals were obtained by individuals. Most of the star beast crystals were obtained by Gue Yuan City. There were at least 900,000 star beast crystals. The value of 900,000 star beast crystals was inestimable. The 2 destroyed strongholds were in the process of being rebuilt. In addition to other matters, the exchange of contribution points was delayed. Chu Mu didn't mind. He calculated the gains from the beast tide, and Xiao went into seclusion to comprehend the various experiences of the battle. Other than 80,000 contribution points, Chu Mu also obtained a few thousand star beast crystals. He calculated that there were over 300 high-grade star beast crystals, 2,000 mid-grade star beast crystals, and 2,000 low-grade star beast crystals. Such gains were truly astonishing. Therefore, Chu Mu went through the experiences of life and death in these few days. He tried his best to perfect his shortcomings. He also got Little Tian to cooperate with him to continuously absorb the energy of the star beast crystals to upgrade the Myriad Heavens Sword Dao. It also improved the Myriad Heavens Sword Dao's profoundness of the Star Dao. Little Tian's speed of absorbing the star beast crystals naturally couldn't be compared to Chu Mu's own absorption. However, it could divide the work with Chu Mu and absorb the star beast crystals constantly without affecting Chu Mu's comprehension. On the 9th day, the outline outside the Yuan spirit battlefield became clearer. The absorption rate of the star beasts also decreased greatly. "What is that?" Everyone was startled. They stared blankly, their faces full of shock. From the complete outline, they saw birds and beasts. They saw mountains and rivers. They saw lush greenery. It was like a complete world. "A new world!" someone exclaimed. Suddenly, at the edge of that world, two figures appeared at the same time. They were incomparably huge, and they faced each other. The auras emitted by those two figures were so overwhelming that it seemed to cover the entire primal chaos void. A half-deity, sovereign. The faces of the experts changed drastically as they were filled with astonishment. It was rumored that the Origin City and the Divine City each had a demigod sovereign secretly overseeing them, but there were very few people who could confirm it. Most of them thought it was just a rumor, but they didn't expect it to be true. What kind of world was that? It actually provoked a demigod sovereign to come out and fight against it. The two half-deity supremes released their own energy fluctuations and attacked each other. They were evenly matched, and they also attacked, intending to break through the world's barrier and enter it. However, they were stopped, and this made them extremely shocked. Both of them were demigods, absolute powerhouses who stood at the pinnacle of the chaotic universe. Not to mention a world. Even the barrier of a realm would be easily broken by them. But now, the two of them couldn't do anything to the young man. After a few consecutive attacks, the two demigod supremes' expressions turned grave. They were pleasantly surprised as they gradually realized what this world was. After a while, the two half-deity supremes seemed to have reached a consensus and retreated. It didn't take long for all the experts in Yuan City to receive the news. God's relic has descended. Great emperors and sovereigns can enter and explore it by paying clan merit points or merit points. This was the news that was spread by a great sovereign. God's relic. It's God's relic. Although many people didn't know what God's relic meant, they could imagine it from the name alone. God's relic, combined with the actions of the two half-deity supremes, was likely to be a world left behind by a fallen half-deity supremacy. Just thinking about it made people excited. How many treasures would there be in a world left behind by a half-deity supremacy? It wasn't just the great emperors who were excited. Even the sovereigns were the same. Half-deity supremes were lofty existences. They were the pinnacle of existence in the chaotic universe. They were unparalleled. Even peak great sovereigns couldn't compare to them. The gap between the two was like a chasm. A half-deity supremacy could kill a large number of great sovereigns with a single finger. To demigod sovereigns, great sovereigns could only be considered as slightly stronger ants. Therefore, the treasures left behind by a half-deity supremacy would be very useful to great emperors and sovereigns. Suddenly, everyone moved. They quickly flew into the sky, leaving the primordial spirit battlefield and approaching God's relic. Now, everyone roughly understood why the star tide had triggered the star beast tide. The reason was that God's relic was about to appear. Although God's relic wasn't far from the primordial spirit battlefield, it was actually quite a distance away. Even with the speed of a sovereign, it would take a few days to reach it, let alone a great emperor. Chu Mu directly used the matchless flying ship and quickly flew over with the speed of a lesser sovereign. Many figures, either flying on their own or riding on flying ships, competed with each other as they quickly headed towards God's relic. A few days later, Chu Mu arrived outside God's relic with a group of great emperors riding on flying ships behind a group of sovereigns. At some point, a circle of faintly discernible light surrounded God's relic. Everyone was blocked outside the light. On one side of God's relic were the people from Origin City, and on the other side were the people from God City. Fortunately, God's relic was very large, so the two sides didn't meet. Otherwise, it would have been another life and death battle. To enter God's relic, you need to pay 1,000 clan points or 100,000 merit points. A voice sounded in everyone's minds at the same time. This was undoubtedly a trick set up by a half-deity supremacy. 1,000 clan merit points or 100,000 merit points. Everyone was shocked. 1,000 clan merit points was quite a large amount. However, The clan merit points were obtained from killing star beasts during the star beast tide. 100,000 clan merit points was also very frightening. In the entire territory of Yuan City, there were very few people who had 100,000 clan merit points. It was estimated that there would not be more than 1,000 of them. For example, Chu Mu, who was ranked 81st on the 7th Foothold's merit tablet, only had about 80,000 merit points. However, after thinking about it, it was very worthwhile to exchange 1,000 clan points or 100,000 merit points for a chance to enter God's relic. It could be described as cheap. Knowing this, he had to go in even if he had to break his head and bleed. Chu Mu's thoughts turned slightly. He had both clan points and merit points. Relatively speaking, merit points were obtained during the Star Beast tide. Other than exchanging them in Origin City, they weren't very useful. They were far from being comparable to clan points. Since that was the case, he might as well use up all his merit points and make up for what he didn't have with clan points. More than 80,000 merit points were used up, and Chu Mu's merit points were reduced by more than 100, almost 200 points. Immediately, his body passed through the barrier set up by half-deity supremacy and entered God's relic. The moment he entered, it was like a white steed passing through a crack. It also felt like he was shuttling through a space-time tunnel. The sky and earth were spinning, and countless rays of light were circulating. Chu Mu couldn't distinguish them. He only felt dizzy. This dizziness didn't last for long before disappearing. Chu Mu landed in a large desert. The golden sand was fine and very beautiful, as if it was real golden sand. It was boundless as far as the eye could see. Between the ups and downs, there was a ravine that gave off an indescribable sense of heroism. However, the desert was too quiet. He couldn't hear any sound. Besides himself, Chu Mu couldn't see any other sound. Is this God's relic? Chu Mu wondered. He didn't know why he had appeared in this desert alone. Was it because of the mystery of God's relic? Or was it because the desert was too big? It caused the people who had entered to be scattered all over the place, leaving him here alone. Regardless of which reason it was, Chu Mu wouldn't stay where he was. He had to move. Looking around, no matter which direction he looked, it was endless. Besides the golden sand, he couldn't see anything else. Chu Mu chose a direction based on his intuition. He unfolded his body and was about to fly into the air, but he found that a pressure prevented him from reaching a high altitude. He could only fly at a low altitude of a few meters. What a strange place. Chu Mu thought to himself. He could only maintain a height of about 2 meters from the golden sand and quickly fly forward. 2 meters was a suitable height. If he went any higher, Chu Mu would feel a lot of pressure. That would make his strength deplete too quickly. Was there any danger in this desert? Or how dangerous was it? Chu Mu didn't know any of this. He could only do his best to maintain his strength and keep himself in peak condition. He was in a state where he could attack at any time and deal with any danger that might appear. Other than Chu Mu, who had descended upon this desert, there were many other people who had also descended. However, the desert was too large, and these people who had descended were all scattered. The distance between each other was very far, making it difficult for them to meet in a short period of time. This created the illusion that they were the only people in the desert. Moreover, the people who had arrived in the desert were all great emperors. There wasn't a single dominator. Chu Mu flew for tens of thousands of meters. Besides the golden sand, he still couldn't see anything else. Suddenly, something strange happened. The originally silent desert seemed to come alive. A light flashed, and a sharp aura spread from the desert. Chu Mu was surprised to find that every grain of golden sand was emitting a sharp aura. It was as if they had become sharp swords. Chapter 2273. Every grain of golden sand seemed to contain an incomparably sharp sword chi. The aura emanated, and Chu Mu felt as if he were being pierced by countless sharp swords. Not only did Chu Mu have this feeling, but the other great emperors also had this feeling. No one knew why such a change had occurred in the originally deathly silent desert. Welcome to God's relic. From now on, you are all trial takers. A faintly discernible voice rang out from the void and instantly entered everyone's ears. Everyone unconsciously raised their heads to look, but all they could see was a sky filled with golden light. Trial takers, I will only say this once. Listen carefully, the faintly discernible voice said again. The ethereal voice sounded again. This is the golden light desert, the first level of God's relic. It contains metal element treasures, but it also contains life and death dangers. If you want to enter the next level, you need to find the corresponding key. The key is called the golden mystical sand. After speaking of the golden mystical sand, the faintly discernible voice suddenly fell silent as if it had never sounded. Key. Golden mystical sand? Chumu muttered in a low voice. His mind raced, but in a situation where he lacked sufficient information, he could not deduce what the golden mystical sand was. He could only try his luck. After all, with the golden mystical sand, if he worked hard to find it, he would be able to find it after spending some time. Moreover, didn't the voice say that there were metal element treasures in the great golden desert? If he could find more metal element treasures, perhaps it would help him comprehend the great path of metal and improve the golden swords of the heavens. Thinking of this, Chumu was suddenly filled with motivation. No matter what, this was God's relic. The treasures here would definitely be good. He sped up a little. He was 2 meters away from the desert, flying at a low altitude. The sharp aura emanating from below constantly stimulated Chumu. Suddenly, a bone-chilling feeling caused Chumu's expression to greatly change. An incomparably strong sense of danger instantly exploded in the depths of his mind. His entire body's muscles tensed up. At the same time, an incomparably sharp, golden ray of light flew out from under the golden sand. It was a ruthless attack that was incomparably fierce and merciless. It completely wanted to kill Chumu. At the most crucial moment, Chumu's subconscious mind, which had been tempered countless times and walked on the edge of life and death countless times, erupted. Instinctively, he executed the third layer of the world's near-at-hand technique. Seizing the time difference of a breath, he narrowly avoided the piercing of the golden light. Moreover, his eyes vaguely caught the trace of the golden light. It seemed to be a long whip with sections and sharp barbs at the end. Without waiting for Chumu to think carefully, another 2 golden lights broke through the golden sand and fiercely blasted towards Chumu. The speed was only slightly slower than the previous attack, but it was different. It slashed horizontally at his waist. Chumu's vision captured it even more clearly. The 2 golden lights were 2 large golden pincers. With the 2 swords in his hands, he instantly slashed out and collided with the 2 large pincers. The tyrannical force of the impact almost caused the 2 swords to fly out of his hands. Fortunately, he loosened his hands in time to dissipate the force of the impact and took advantage of the momentum to retreat. Only then did he regain his grip on the 2 swords. The owner of the tail and pincers also broke through the golden sand and appeared in front of Chumu. It was a huge scorpion, a huge golden scorpion that seemed to be cast from gold. Not counting the tail and pincers, just its body alone was 5 meters long. The tail was more than 4 meters long, and the pincers were more than 1 meter long. From this giant golden scorpion, Chumu unexpectedly couldn't feel the slightest bit of aura. It was as if it wasn't alive. If he couldn't feel its aura, he wouldn't be able to determine the giant golden scorpion's strength. He wouldn't be able to detect any signs of the opponent's attacks. This greatly affected his perception. Moreover, its color was the exact same color as the desert, severely affecting his vision. The color was the same as the environment, and he couldn't sense any aura fluctuations. He also couldn't determine its strength. This scorpion was even more of an assassin than an assassin. Chumu held his swords with both hands. With the cooperation of Little Tian, the celestial 5 elements swords quickly condensed. He had to use his true strength to deal with this huge golden scorpion. After the huge golden scorpion appeared, it didn't pause for long and immediately launched a second attack. The 4-meter-long tail tore through the air once more. It was even faster than the first time, and its color was also golden. To a certain extent, it clearly affected Chu Mu's vision. Chu Mu simply closed his eyes and raised his perception to the limit. It covered the entire area, allowing him to capture any movement. Even though the huge golden scorpion didn't have any aura fluctuations, its attacks would cause slight fluctuations. Chu Mu was able to sense them and react accordingly. He quickly dodged the tail attack, and the 5 swords shone with 5 different colors as they instantly struck down, all of them attacking the huge golden scorpion. The huge golden scorpion had a clear target, and all 5 swords hit it. What surprised Chu Mu was that the 5 swords actually couldn't break through the scorpion's shell. Instead, they were bounced back, and the scorpion wasn't damaged at all. Powerful strength, shocking defense. Chu Mu was inwardly shocked. Just thinking about it made his scalp go numb. The color was the same as the environment. This was a natural protective color. There wasn't the slightest bit of aura fluctuation. Powerful strength and shocking defense. Such an opponent's strength was too terrifying. Wind sword attack. Thunder sword attack. Even though Chu Mu was very surprised, his hands didn't slow down. He immediately performed Sword 10. The blue and purple sword light formed a cross, attacking the huge golden scorpion. The cross sword light instantly shattered upon hitting the huge golden scorpion's body, leaving behind 2 wounds. However, even though those wounds were clear, they still couldn't break through the scorpion's shell and injure it. The huge golden scorpion's tail cooperated with its pincers and attacked Chu Mu again. Its speed was fast, its strength was tyrannical, and its power was shocking. Chu Mu's body moved, alternating between worlds and near at hand and 4 directions, truth-seeking steps, dodging the attacks of the huge golden scorpion. The 5 elemental swords each performed Sword 10 to attack the wounds on the scorpion's body. After being injured again and again, the huge golden scorpion seemed to have realized the danger. Its legs moved continuously, and it quickly dove into the golden sand, disappearing. Chu Mu floated 2 meters above the golden sand, holding the swords with both hands. The 5 elemental swords revolved around him, and he didn't dare to relax. The huge golden scorpion could appear at any time. It was like a competition of patience to see who could hold it in longer. Time passed slowly, and this feeling was a kind of torture. Chu Mu suddenly had an idea. If he was so vigilant, perhaps the huge golden scorpion wouldn't appear so easily. If that was the case, then he would create an opening to confuse the opponent. Thinking of this, Chu Mu relaxed. But this was only a facade, and it was fake. As expected, after 3 breaths of time, the huge golden scorpion attacked again, aiming for Chu Mu. Chu Mu pretended to be caught off guard and dodged awkwardly. The huge golden scorpion also rushed out of the golden sand, attacking Chu Mu simultaneously. 11th sword, wind and thunder sword. Chu Mu grasped the opportunity and roared. The heavenly wind sword and heavenly thunder sword in his hands instantly combined, fusing into a long sword with one side green and one side purple. He held it tightly in his hands, raised it high and slashed it down again. Green and purple intersected, and the cyclone and electric arc merged. It seemed to cut and slash at the same time, and it instantly attacked the huge golden scorpion. In terms of power, the wind and thunder sword was not as strong as the 5-element sword, but it was clearly stronger than the 10th sword. The power of the great Tao of wind and thunder surged, directly attacking the wound on the huge golden scorpion's body. The tough outer shell was immediately cut open by the wind and thunder sword. This sword truly injured the huge golden scorpion. Golden blood spurted out. Because of the intense pain, the huge golden scorpion's body trembled, and it let out a strange cry. This was a good opportunity, and Chu-Mu would not let go. The 5 elements sword struck again. Metal sword, wood sword, water sword, fire sword, earth sword. Among the 5 swords, the fire sword was the most powerful. It directly pierced through the wound created by the wind and thunder sword, piercing through the body of the huge golden scorpion. After 5 swords, the huge golden scorpion was finally killed. After the golden scorpion died, its tail and pincers fell off, softly falling onto the golden sand. It slowly melted and sank into the sand, disappearing without a trace. All that was left was a fist-sized golden light that gave off a wave of gold energy. Chu-Mu stretched out his hand, and the golden light flew into his hand. The wave of golden energy became clearer. Master, this light contains pure energy. It's not the great Tao of gold, nor is it the origin of gold. However, it's comparable to the origin of gold. It's beneficial to the upgrade of the All Heavens golden swords. Little Tian's tender voice sounded. Absorb it. Chu-Mu said, Okay. Little Tian agreed happily. Under Little Tian's control, the golden light was immediately absorbed. It was an extremely pure accumulation of golden energy. It was quickly absorbed, and not a single drop was left. Chu-Mu could also see that the color of the All Heavens golden swords was becoming purer and brighter. Master, as long as there's another ball of golden energy like this, the All Heavens golden swords will be able to upgrade to the mid-Great Emperor level. Little Tian said happily. The upgrade of the All Heavens golden swords was equivalent to an upgrade of its spirituality. Hearing Little Tian's words, Chu-Mu was also very happy. If he relied on his own comprehension to upgrade the All Heavens golden swords, it would be very difficult. It would undoubtedly take a very long time, and it would definitely take a lot of time and effort. And now he had a better method to raise the grade of the All Heavens sword without any side effects. Then he could passively raise the profundities of the All Heavens sword way and combine it with his own understanding. The effect would undoubtedly be better. Could it be that the golden energy is the metal element treasure that the voice spoke of? Chu-Mu guessed. Whether it is or not, I have to obtain as much as I can to upgrade the All Heavens golden swords. The reason why the fire sword of the All Heavens fire sword was stronger was because the All Heavens fire sword was a mid-Great Emperor level sword. Chapter 2274. The golden desert stretched as far as the eye could see. Everyone who came to the desert was trying their best to find the golden immortal sand, the key to the next level. In the process of finding the golden immortal sand, they were constantly attacked by the golden scorpions. Many emperors died under the attacks of the golden scorpions. This kind of death was true death. This was the second time Chu-Mu was attacked by a golden scorpion, but it was easier than the last time. It wasn't that the giant golden scorpion was weak, but that Chu-Mu was already prepared. He knew that there would be giant golden scorpions living under the desert and secretly attacking. It was because of this mental preparation that he was able to calmly deal with them. 11th sword, 5 elements sword. The 5 elements swords of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth gathered into a huge sword. The 5 colors intertwined, and it was like a meteor falling from the sky. The golden scorpion's hard shell was instantly broken by the sword. Its body was penetrated and golden blood spurted out. Then it died. Its corpse quickly melted and sank into the desert, leaving behind a ball of golden light. Metal element treasure. Without exception, Chu-Mu let little Tian absorb it. The 5 elements swords were also absorbed into his body. After absorbing it, Chu-Mu could clearly feel waves of energy coming from his body. A sharp aura spread out, and golden light surged, covering his entire body. After 10 breaths, the golden light was absorbed into his body. With a thought, Chu-Mu released a smear of golden light. The golden swords of heaven appeared again, and the sharpness they gave off was several times stronger than before. Master, The golden swords of heaven have been upgraded to middle emperor level swords. Little Tian said happily. Very good. Chu Mu was also very happy. The increase in the grade of the All Heaven's golden swords meant that the mysteries of the great way of metal contained in the origin of the All Heaven's sword way would also slowly increase. If he had the time to comprehend it, the rate of increase would be even faster. However, now wasn't a good time to comprehend it. He could only let it slowly improve on its own. Although the upgrade of the heavenly golden swords was something worth celebrating, there was no clue about the golden immortal sand, the key to enter the next level. Although he was a little helpless, Chu Mu was not anxious. This kind of thing could not be rushed. In the golden light desert, it was difficult to sense the passage of time. Therefore, Chu Mu did not know how much time had passed since he entered. He felt as if it had been a long time since he had killed the second golden scorpion. Suddenly, a speck of golden light shot out from under the golden sand. It was extremely fast, and it flew past Chu Mu not far away. Chu Mu focused his gaze and vaguely saw that it was a fist-sized golden rock that was emitting waves of metal energy. Without much time to think, Chu Mu immediately turned around. His figure flashed as he quickly chased after the golden stone. However, the golden stone was extremely fast. It seemed as if it had a certain degree of intelligence. It could even accelerate and dodge. Could this be the golden immortal sand? Chu Mu thought to himself as he chased after it. It seemed to fit the name golden immortal sand very well. No matter what, Chu Mu had to catch it. The 5 elemental swords appeared. Under the power of the imperial god sword technique, they flew out faster than Chu Mu to intercept the golden stone. However, the stone instantly bent and was extremely agile. It found an almost impossible gap to escape from the encirclement of the 5 elemental swords. This scene made Chu Mu very surprised. However, it also made him even more certain that this was the so-called golden immortal sand. Otherwise, it would not be so magical. This was Chu Mu's feeling and judgment. Chu Mu continuously chased and intercepted, but was dodged time and time again. He felt as if he was fighting against a cunning opponent. The golden stone was extremely fast, but Chu Mu's speed was not slow either. He executed the first level of the world's end near at hand body to the extreme. He continuously chased after it and intercepted it with the 5 elemental swords. This kind of pursuit made Chu Mu's control of the 5 elemental swords become even more proficient and precise. Suddenly, the 5 elemental swords surrounded the golden stone like a cage. Chu Mu's figure flickered as he executed the 3rd level of the world's end near at hand body. In the time of a breath, he executed the 2nd level of the world's end near at hand body. He instantly appeared beside the golden stone and grabbed it with his hand that was wrapped with the tyrannical power of the great true wheel. The previous pursuit allowed Chu Mu to have a deeper understanding of the golden stone. He knew that this thing had a certain level of spirituality. It sought luck and avoided danger, but there was a limit. And Chu Mu's final move was to capture the golden stone. After grabbing the golden stone, Chu Mu felt a strong resistance, as if it wanted to break free from his grasp. As the great true wheel rotated, the image of the great true wheel appeared behind Chu Mu's back. This meant that Chu Mu had circulated the truth-seeking technique to the extreme. A tyrannical power was added to his palm as he grabbed the golden stone tightly, causing its resistance to become weaker and weaker. When the golden stone stopped moving, a message entered Chu Mu's mind. It really is the golden immortal sand. Chu Mu was overjoyed. Previously, it was just a guess. But now, the message he received confirmed that the object in his hand was the so-called golden immortal sand. Other than the name, there was also an introduction about the golden immortal sand. This was a precious material used to forge great emperor-level weapons and secret treasures. Adding a little golden immortal sand to forge great emperor-level weapons and secret treasures would make them even harder. If it was a metal-attributed weapon or secret treasure, the effect would be even better. Especially sharp weapons like swords, their sharpness would be even sharper. If the golden immortal sand was used as the main ingredient and other materials were added, the metal-attributed weapon or secret treasure forged would be even stronger than a weapon or secret treasure of the same level. It was extremely precious and hard to come by. Chu Mu was very tempted, although he didn't need to forge any metal-attributed swords. The All-Heaven swords he forged had a special ability. They could absorb the essence of the golden immortal sand. Whether it was used to strengthen the All-Heaven swords or just the All-Heaven swords, it was a very good idea. Unfortunately, this was the key to entering the next level. Chu Mu couldn't use it. Maybe I won't enter the next level first. I'll continue to search and see if I can find more golden immortal sand. Chu Mu thought. However, he quickly dismissed this idea. Perhaps he could find more golden immortal sand if he continued to stay in the Golden Light Desert. However, it would undoubtedly take a lot of time. Although he couldn't feel the flow of time, it didn't mean that time wouldn't pass. If he continued to stay, he might be slower than others. With this thought, Chu Mu decided to use this piece of golden immortal sand to enter the next level. The rewards in God's relic should not be any worse than the golden immortal sand. Immediately, Chu Mu's power surged into the golden immortal sand that had been subdued. The golden immortal sand released a strong light that enveloped Chu Mu's entire body. Then it disappeared. After a moment of intense dizziness, Chu Mu instantly regained his senses. He smelled a fresh scent. At a glance, he saw an emerald green that was full of vitality. He was standing in a forest. There was no sound, but a message appeared in his mind. Green Forest, second level of God's relic. The way to leave Green Forest and enter the next level was to obtain the green immortal wood. The first level was the Golden Light Desert, where I found the golden immortal sand. The second level was Green Forest, where I found the green immortal wood. Could it be that the third level is related to water, the fourth level is related to fire, and the fifth level is related to earth? This conjecture flashed through Chu Mu's mind. If this conjecture was true, then it meant that Chu Mu's celestial 5 elements swords could be upgraded. This would indirectly increase his strength. In the Golden Light Desert, there was a giant golden scorpion. After killing it, one could obtain the power of gold and upgrade the celestial golden swords. Is there something similar in Green Forest? While he was guessing, Chu Mu also moved forward. He raised his perception to the extreme to deal with any possible danger that might appear. Suddenly, a green sword light descended with the power of the great path of wood. In an instant, it came for the kill. Chu Mu reacted quickly. With one step, the green sword light swept past him and pierced through the huge tree behind him. Immediately, another green sword light came for the kill. Behind the sword light was a figure. God Race. Chu Mu narrowed his eyes. He was a little surprised to encounter a god race, but at the same time it was expected. After all, the Origin City's people were not the only ones who entered the god's ruins. With the celestial wind sword and celestial lightning sword in his hands, Chu Mu swiftly counterattacked after dodging the god race's attack. A green sword light and a purple sword light pierced through the air. Chu Mu took a step forward, closing in on the god race expert. Both swords slashed out. The celestial 5 elements swords condensed and attacked the god race expert from all directions. It was as if there were 6 people attacking the god race expert at the same time. Each one of them had strength that surpassed the average low-level 3rd step Emperor realm. The god race expert felt immense pressure. His face turned ashen. Without hesitation, he borrowed the power of the green forest trees and channeled the power of the great path of wood to escape. However, Chu Mu wouldn't give him the chance. The wind and lightning swords intertwined, and a cross-shaped sword light pierced through the air. The celestial 5 elements swords circled around Huang Xiaolong, blocking the god race expert's escape route. The god race expert failed to kill Huang Xiaolong and died under Chu Mu's sword. His spatial ring and sword became Chu Mu's spoils of war. Just as Chu Mu killed the god race expert and collected his spoils of war, a strong sense of danger assaulted him, causing his hair to stand on end. Without hesitation, Huang Xiaolong swiftly executed the 4 directions, truth-seeking step's 3rd stage and retreated in a breath's time. At the same time, a dark brown light pierced through the air like a sword. Although it missed its target, it was as soft as a long whip. It coiled around Chu Mu and swept out horizontally, as if it wanted to tie up Chu Mu and whip him. Chu Mu dodged again and again, shifting his feet as he escaped from the dark brown light's attack. As if realizing that one attack couldn't do anything to Chu Mu, a strange voice sounded. In the next moment, streaks of dark brown light pierced through the air like a sword and a whip. Chapter 2275. Rays of light shot out. They were either as straight as swords, or as long as whips, or as venomous snakes waiting for an opportunity to strike. Every attack was extremely quick, accurate, and fatal. Their trajectories were completely natural, and they seemed to be at their fingertips. Chu Mu seemed to see a powerful sword cultivator with extraordinary cultivation and extraordinary swordsmanship attacking him. The feeling of meeting a worthy opponent arose spontaneously, and a kind of excitement grew in his heart. He observed the trajectories of every attack. The sword was straight and was good at stabbing, but that was only the most basic way of using it. A brilliant sword cultivator could bend the sword at will, and could also make every part of the sword fatal. Chu Mu's footsteps shifted rapidly, and the 2 swords in his hand struck out repeatedly, blocking every attack of his opponent. He carefully observed every change of his opponent, and absorbed them, and then used them for his own use. The heavenly 5 elemental swords also moved. The attacks of the heavenly gold swords were more direct and more powerful. The attacks of the heavenly wood swords had the tenacity and vitality of grass breaking out of the ground. The heavenly water swords were like endless waves, and every attack of the heavenly fire swords was extremely violent. When the heavenly earth swords slashed down, it was as if the earth was about to collapse. Chu Mu further unearthed the characteristics of the heavenly 5 elemental swords and made them even more flexible and powerful. The characteristics of the wind and thunder swords in his hands were also unearthed a little more. Chu Mu had forged the heavenly swords himself, but he was also unable to unleash the potential of the heavenly swords to the extreme in one go. He had to slowly unearth the potential of the heavenly swords with each use, and make them stronger and stronger. The process of unearthing could be through comprehension, battle, or observation. In short, there were many methods that were useful. After a few minutes, Chu Mu had seen through all of his opponent's attacking methods and had absorbed all of their advantages. His counterattack began. The wind and thunder dual swords slashed out, rapidly advancing. The 5 element swords crisscrossed, and streaks of dark brown light were immediately sliced apart, falling to the ground. Those were tree roots. Chu Mu cut off the tree roots as he quickly moved forward. Soon, he arrived in front of the strong enemy. It was a huge tree that was constantly waving its roots to attack Chu Mu from all directions. As Chu Mu approached, the tree roots quickly wrapped around him, forming a closed circle in the blink of an eye. It was as if it had cast a cage, imprisoning Chu Mu and then quickly shrinking. 11th blade, wind and thunder sword. Chu Mu used his ultimate move. The greenish-purple sword light slashed out like a crescent moon, cutting off the tree roots. Then he quickly drilled out from the gap between the tree roots. 11th blade, 5 elements, sword strike. The celestial 5 elemental swords combined into one and unleashed their power. With the power of the great path of the 5 elements, this sword was several times stronger than the sword of wind and thunder. The sword light of the 5 colors intersected and blasted down like a destructive meteor. Although the tree was strong, it was unable to resist the 5 elements' sword strike. One had to know that the 5 elements' sword strike's power had increased due to the increase in the grade of the golden swords. Under the 5 elements sword strike, the tree was directly cut through. This tree was also a kind of life. After being cut through, its life force was quickly drained, and it quickly died under Chu Mu's sword. The killed tree quickly melted, like the giant golden scorpion. In the end, it left behind a ball of green light that was full of vitality. Master, it's the power of wood. It's the same as the power of metal, little Tian said excitedly. The result was naturally to absorb it and use it to upgrade the wooden swords. As expected, after absorbing the power of wood, the wooden swords received an obvious upgrade. However, if they wanted to upgrade, they would need to absorb the same level of power of wood. Chu Mu was not worried at all. In this azure forest, he would definitely find the power of wood again. Not long after, Chu Mu was attacked again. It was another tree that attacked him. This tree seemed to be a life unique to the azure forest. This tree was much stronger than the previous one. Chu Mu used the 8th level of the immemorial sword seal and used all his strength to finally kill it. It was rather difficult, and after killing it, his strength was almost completely depleted. This place wasn't safe, so he quickly used a quick recovery secret technique to quickly recover his strength and injuries. After absorbing the power of wood, the wooden swords indeed had a breakthrough and upgraded to the mid-grade Great Emperor level, the same level as the golden swords and fire swords. Only the heavenly water swords and heavenly earth swords had not been upgraded. After some time, Chu Mu found the azure divine wood. The azure divine wood was similar to the golden divine sand. They both had a certain level of spirituality and were precious materials for forging great emperor level weapons and secret treasures. Using the azure divine wood, Chu Mu entered the 3rd level of the god's relic, the Wanxiang Lake. Just as Chu Mu had guessed, the 3rd level was related to water. To leave the Wanxiang Lake and enter the 4th level, one had to find the corresponding key called the tidal divine water. The Wanxiang Lake was boundless. The lake water was blue and reflected the blue sky and white clouds. It was very beautiful. It was like a scenic tourist spot. However, such a place also contained danger. Suddenly, as Chu Mu flew past, the lake water rippled and formed a whirlpool. It produced a suction force that made Chu Mu feel like he was going to be sucked in. He was very cautious and flew away at a shocking speed, escaping the range of the suction force. Not long after, Chu Mu saw a 2nd step Great Emperor appear not far away. The moment he appeared, the lake water below changed and a whirlpool appeared rapidly. The suction force sucked in the 2nd step Great Emperor. The 2nd step Great Emperor was not weak. He instantly burst forth and broke free from the suction force of the whirlpool. He was about to leave when suddenly something strange happened. Chu Mu clearly saw a blue tentacle that looked like an octopus shoot out from the center of the whirlpool. It broke through the air and quickly wrapped around the 2nd step Great Emperor's body. It pulled violently and directly pulled the 2nd step Great Emperor into the whirlpool and disappeared. I see, Chu Mu thought. It seems like there are unique creatures of the Wanxiang Lake hidden in the whirlpool, like the giant golden scorpion in the Golden Light Desert and the big tree in the green forest. If I can kill such a creature, I might be able to obtain the power of water and improve the heavenly water swords. Chu Mu stared at the whirlpool and quickly flew over. However, the whirlpool disappeared very quickly. It seemed like he could only look for another opportunity. As Chu Mu flew at a low altitude, he carefully searched. Not long after, another whirlpool appeared. Not far away, Chu Mu quickly flew over. His powerful strength directly shattered the suction force. Immediately after, a blue tentacle condensed from water shot out from the center of the whirlpool and swept towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu slashed with his 2 swords and cut the tentacle in half. The heavenly 5 elemental swords fell and executed the 5 elemental sword attack, slamming into the whirlpool. The whirlpool instantly shattered under the power of the 5 elemental sword attack. More tentacles shot out from the water. These tentacles had the flexibility of water and were very difficult to deal with. Chumu dodged and defended himself while observing. With this observation, he slowly improved the use of the heavenly water swords. Then he countered them. After destroying all the tentacles, Chumu executed the 5 elemental sword attack again and killed the strange creature. He obtained a ball of water energy and absorbed it to improve the heavenly water swords. When Chumu obtained the second ball of water energy, the heavenly water swords were upgraded to the middle, Great Emperor level and became even more powerful. Then he felt a trace of spirituality enter the Wanxiang Lake and found the tidal divine water. Chumu couldn't help but be surprised. No matter if it was the Golden Light Desert or the Cyan Forest or even the Wanxiang Lake, he had only found the key to the next level after obtaining 2 corresponding balls of energy. Between the two, was there some inevitable connection? Unable to figure it out, Chumu used the tidal divine water to enter the next level. The earthly fire plains. High temperatures filled the air, and a strong smell of sulfur filled the air. The ground under his feet was dry and cracked, emitting smoke. From time to time, flames would burst out from the cracks, bringing with them a terrifying temperature. It is indeed related to fire. Chumu thought. It seemed that the 5th level was undoubtedly related to Earth. The 4th level of the earthly fire plains was also boundless, and it was difficult to see other cultivators. Speaking of which, since entering the Golden Light Desert, Chumu had not met anyone else. In the Green Forest, he met a deity tribe member, and in the Wanxiang Lake, he met a Vajra tribe member. The unique creature of the earthly fire plains was the earthly fire beast. Although it was a beast, it stood upright like a human. It had flaming claws on its arms and a flaming tail on its back. The earthly fire beast's body was burning with intense flames. At the end of the flames, there was a trace of green, indicating its shocking temperature. The earthly fire beast was also very powerful. It had a unique use of the power of fire, which was worthy of Chumu's learning. Chumu naturally circled around it in battle, taking the opportunity to observe and absorb its essence. Then he killed it and obtained the power of fire. Like before, he also obtained 2 balls of fire. However, the celestial fire sword was already at the middle emperor grade. 2 balls of fire were not enough to raise its grade again. Next, Chumu obtained the blazing god fire, which was the key to enter the 5th level. The 5th level was called the gravel ground. The unique creature of the gravel ground was the rock giant. They were 10 meters tall, and their bodies were made of grayish-white rocks. They were very hard. Although they moved slowly, they were very powerful. Every attack they made would bring a heavy pressure, causing the surrounding air to become extremely heavy and oppressive, affecting the speed and agility of others. Compared to the rock giant, Chumu's body was very small, like an ant. He was very agile and tried his best to resist the pressure brought by the rock giant. He looked for the right opportunity to kill the rock giant. After killing the 2 rock giants, he obtained 2 balls of earth energy. As a result, the celestial earth sword's grade also increased, becoming a middle emperor grade sword. Chapter 2276. The moment the All Heavens Earth sword advanced to mid-grade emperor grade, the All Heavens 5 elements swords automatically flowed within Chumu's body. Using the method of 5 elements generation, the swords became faster and faster. All kinds of mysteries filled the air, and like gears, they began to drive the mysteries of the 5 elements in the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin to increase. Chumu stood in place, and for a moment, it was as if he had turned into a statue. His aura filled the air, fluctuating up and down, appearing very chaotic. This lasted for a full 10 breaths of time before the All Heavens 5 elements swords finally calmed down. Chumu's aura instantly dropped, then rose sharply, breaking through the original limit and reaching a higher level. Mid-level, 2nd step Emperor Realm. His aura was still rising, and in the end it surpassed the mid-level second step Emperor realm and approached the high-level second step Emperor realm. It seemed that as long as he worked a little harder, he would be able to break through the limit and reach the high-level second step Emperor realm. However, Chumu knew that it would not be easy. An increase in cultivation meant an increase in strength. This was something worth celebrating. Especially now, the cultivators he encountered were getting stronger and stronger. This meant that his opponents would also get stronger and stronger. Thus, Chumu needed even more strength to deal with them. Holding the black divine earth in his hand, Chumu's power surged, and his body was wrapped up. Then he disappeared from the 5th floor. The next floor was the 6th floor of the god's ruin. Chumu had guessed that the 6th floor, like the previous 5 floors, would be related to some kind of Tao power. However, when he really arrived at the 6th floor, he realized that his guess was wrong. The 6th floor was called the Tao Comprehending Ground. This Tao Comprehending Ground did not look very big. At the very least, one could see the end of it with a glance. In the center of the Tao Comprehending Ground stood a huge black stone tablet. That stone tablet seemed to have no height, and one could not see the end of it. It seemed to reach into the clouds. The huge black stone tablet was covered with marks. One after another, they were tangled and complicated. At a glance, one could feel that they contained endless mysteries. The information that appeared in Chumu's mind also let him know what this huge black stone tablet was called. The Divine Martial Tao Tablet. Among the information, there was also information about the origin of the Divine Martial Path Tablet. It was left behind by the Master of God's Relic, a demigod sovereign whose title was unknown. The markings on it were all left behind by the demigod sovereign who had comprehended martial arts when he was a great emperor. What the cultivators needed to do after entering the 6th floor was to comprehend the markings on the Divine Martial Path stele as much as possible in the same amount of time. They needed to comprehend the mysteries within and absorb them as much as possible for their own use. Then he entered the next level. Finally, fighting was forbidden on the 6th level. Violators would be killed without mercy. That was all the information he had. Before Chumu, there were already people who had entered the 6th level. They stood in front of the Divine Martial Tao stele and carefully looked at it. After Chumu entered, people also entered one after another. More and more people appeared on the 6th level and stood in front of the Divine Martial Tao stele. There were humans, aliens, and gods. Perhaps because they were afraid. Even though their bodies were overflowing with murderous intent, they did not dare to make a move. However, the gods stood on one side, while the humans and other races stood on the other side. They were opposing each other and were afraid of each other. They resisted and did not dare to make a move. The comprehension had already begun. Everyone's comprehension time was the same, but it was not synchronized. Whoever entered the state of comprehension would have their time calculated. After Chumu finished adjusting his breathing, he began to comprehend. His eyes were focused on the Divine Martial Path stele. He looked at the mark at the bottom of the Divine Martial Path stele. There was a little trick to comprehending the Divine Martial Path stele, and that was to start from the bottom. This was because the marks at the bottom represented the most obvious mysteries. There were many marks on the Divine Martial Path stele, but they were incomparably mysterious. Sword cultivators who comprehended them would feel that they were swordsmanship. Martial cultivators who comprehended them would feel that they were martial arts. In short, different people comprehending the same mark would have different comprehensions. Chumu was a sword cultivator. In his opinion, these marks were marks left behind by sharp swords. They contained the mysteries of swordsmanship. What kind of swordsmanship was it? Chumu did not know. This was because the swordsmanship contained in these marks was very simple and also very vague. There was no fixed boundary. But no matter what kind of swordsmanship it was, Chumu could comprehend it. This was because his all heavens swordsmanship contained all the mysteries. On the Divine Martial Path stele, The sword mark at the bottom of the steel contained the most profound mysteries. When Chumu looked at it, he felt that the sword mark seemed to come alive. It instantly shot out and transformed into a sword light that pierced towards him. Chumu's body did not move at all, but his mind had already sent out a sword. Bringing along his own swordsmanship, he stabbed out with his sword. The sword light shattered, turning into specks of light that spread out. Chumu also comprehended the mysteries contained within. It was easy for him. His gaze shifted slightly and looked at the second sword mark. When Chumu looked at each sword mark, it seemed to come alive and transformed into a sword light. The higher the sword mark was, the more profound and powerful the sword light was. Different sword marks had different sword light. Some were fierce, some were sharp, some were soft, some were continuous, some were violent, some were blazing. In the blink of an eye, Chumu had comprehended dozens of sword marks. He had no choice but to fly into the air. This way, he could better see the sword marks. Time was counting down. Chumu was not the only one comprehending. The other cultivators, regardless of race, were also comprehending. As they comprehended, their bodies slowly floated into the air as they comprehended the traces at higher places. Some of the cultivators comprehended very quickly and had already flown to a height of 10 meters. Some of the cultivators comprehended very slowly and had just flown up. The difference was very obvious. The Shinwu Dao tablet was incomparably huge and wide. It was also very mysterious. No matter how many people comprehended it together, it would not affect their vision. They would not even feel disturbed. Chumu belonged to the group of people who comprehended it the fastest. This group of people had the fewest people. There were only a few dozen of them in total. For the time being, it was hard to tell who was better and who was worse. As he continued to comprehend, all kinds of mysteries regarding the way of the sword flowed into Chumu's mind and were absorbed by him. 11 meters, 12 meters, 13 meters. After a period of time, Chumu had comprehended to a height of 20 meters. At this time, among the dozens of people, there were a few who were left behind. The higher the mark, the more profound the mysteries were and the more difficult it was to comprehend. Therefore, the further one went, the more it tested one's perception and other talents. Cultivators with outstanding perception began to take the lead bit by bit, differentiating themselves from the others. Chumu was one of them. In terms of comprehension, from ancient times until now, those who could compare to him were extremely few and hard to find. Gradually, Chumu began to surpass the others and took the first place. There might not be any benefits to taking the first place in this kind of comprehension, but it also reflected a cultivator's perception. Some people would be envious or even jealous. However, the Shun clan only had a strong murderous intent. They were even considering if they should risk their lives to kill this human. Moreover, there were some Shun clan members who really put their thoughts into action. A Shun clan member who was not far from Chumu gave up on comprehending the way of the sword and exploded with all his strength in an instant. The sword light was as bright as the sun, and it carried an unparalleled murderous intent as it charged towards Chumu. The sudden attack and the strength of the Shin clan member, who was a peak third step great emperor. Chumu did not have the strength to resist at all. However, just as Chumu felt the murderous intent coming towards him, a force descended from the sky and directly imprisoned the Shin clan member who attacked. Even the sword light that he stabbed out was frozen and stopped. In the next moment, the sword light disappeared and the Shun clan member was silently reduced to dust. In the eyes of the crowd, this scene was extremely terrifying. At this point, no matter how strong the murderous intent in the hearts of the other Shin clan members was, they did not dare to attack Chumu at all. This was because they all knew that in this place, the rules were the rules and there was no chance of luck. Even if they had to pay the price with their lives, they could not eliminate a future, terrifying opponent for the Shin clan. There was no loophole to exploit. This kind of murderous intent and the feeling of helplessness almost drove them crazy. Chu Mu did not have any worries and focused on comprehending the divine, martial Tao tablet. He became more and more familiar with the mysteries of the way of the sword. He absorbed all the comprehensions one by one and integrated them into his all-heavens way of the sword, further perfecting it. Up, up, up. 30 meters. 40 meters. 50 meters. At this point, Chu Mu was completely in the lead. The second place was 8 meters away from Chu Mu. At 60 meters, the distance between the second place and Chu Mu was 10 meters. 70 meters. 80 meters. 90 meters. At 90 meters, Chu Mu discovered that the divine martial Tao tablet was not without an upper limit. Its upper limit was 100 meters. However, the divine martial Tao tablet was incomparably mysterious. Looking at it from the bottom, it gave people a feeling that there was no upper limit and no height. It was as if it was not wide, but also very wide. No matter how many people were in front of it, it would not feel crowded. The methods of a demigod sovereign were extraordinary. The marks on the divine martial Tao steel were left behind by a demigod sovereign whose name was unknown. Regarding the mysteries of the martial Tao of the great emperor realm, the comprehension of the great emperor realm left behind by a demigod sovereign was incomparable to that of an ordinary great emperor. At this moment, there were still some emperor realm cultivators who could only comprehend at 10 or 20 meters. The time was almost up. Chu Mu was not affected at all. He was still wholeheartedly comprehending and did not care about the time that was about to end. The higher he went, the deeper the mysteries of the sword marks. Before this, Chu Mu could easily comprehend the mysteries of each mark. However, he could not do so now. It was too difficult, especially when he reached 90 meters. There was a qualitative increase. This was completely within the limits of a third step great emperor. Moreover, it was the comprehension of a third step great emperor. Even if a true third step great emperor wanted to comprehend it, it would be too difficult. Chapter 2277. Chu Mu's figure rose up once more. This was the 93rd meter position. But just as he began to comprehend, Chu Mu felt his thoughts stop. It was as if everything had frozen. The sword mark in front of him seemed infinitely far away. In the next moment, the sword mark blurred and then disappeared. Time was up. Everyone realized that the human who had been hovering above them had disappeared without a trace. They didn't need to think too much to know that this person's meditation time was up. He had left the 6th level and had been sent to the 7th level. Chu Mu was not the first person to enter the 7th level. When he appeared on the 7th level, he saw other figures. They were people who had entered the 7th level before him. These people had comprehended the divine martial Tao steel before him. Thinking of the divine martial Tao steel, Chu Mu knew that his harvest this time had been good. Comprehending the divine martial Tao steel had further perfected his sword Tao. This was equivalent to dozens or even hundreds of years of accumulation in the outside world. This sort of accumulation was difficult to see results in a short period of time, but it was extremely important. As Chu Mu entered the 7th level, a stone stele naturally rose up in front of him. This stone stele was 10 meters tall and was shaped like a sword. In front of everyone else, there was also a stone stele. They were all different in appearance and seemed to be closely related to the martial arts that they cultivated. This further displayed the strength of the master of the god's relic. This strength was not only reflected in strength. The 7th and 6th levels could be considered one. This was a test. The test was to integrate what one had comprehended from the 6th level into themselves, and then leave their own comprehensions on the 7th level stone stele. Then, according to the height of the stele, one would receive a corresponding reward. There was no explanation as to what the reward was. In order to obtain a better reward, everyone who entered the 7th level was working hard. They sat cross-legged beneath the stone stele, slowly digesting the mysteries of the 6th level and transforming them into their own. Chu Mu also sat down cross-legged. He had comprehended the 6th level's divine, martial Tao steel to a height of 93 meters. He was far ahead of the second place person by more than 10 meters. This was an almost insurmountable gap. Chu Mu felt that it was a pity that he didn't have enough time. If he had more time, he was confident that he would be able to comprehend all of the profound marks on the divine martial Tao tablet. Now that he had arrived at the 7th floor, Chu Mu put aside the regret in his heart and focused on comprehending. He hadn't fully grasped the mysteries of the marks on the 6th floor. He still needed some time to comprehend them. Maybe it was a day or maybe it was 10 days. In short, Chu Mu felt that a lot of time had passed. He awoke from his state of enlightenment and opened his eyes. A sharp light shot out from his eyes, landing on the stone tablet in front of him as if it wanted to penetrate it. Taking a deep breath, Chu Mu's figure suddenly flashed, and the wind and thunder swords appeared in his hands. The celestial 5 elemental swords also appeared. When it came to the reward, Chu Mu had no intention of hiding it. The 2 swords vibrated like wings, bringing his body closer to the stone tablet. Taking advantage of the momentum, the celestial 5 elemental swords also vibrated and attacked. They turned into 5 streams of light and quickly swam around the stone tablet. The wind and thunder swords and the celestial 5 elemental swords seemed to have no pattern as they swept across the stone tablet. Starting from the bottom, there were traces left behind. These traces were sword marks. Some were stabs, some were slashes. Some were straight, some were twists, some were long, some were short, some were stretched, and some were rushed. It was as if the brush was moving like a dragon or a snake. It seemed chaotic, but actually contained a mystery and a unique charm. Chu Mu's figure slowly climbed up, as if he was climbing up the stone tablet. Very quickly, he reached a height of 10 meters. The stone tablet grew naturally, reaching a height of 20 meters. Every sword mark was Chu Mu's understanding of the way of the sword. This was a rare treasure. This method was equivalent to materializing what he had learned. And every time Chu Mu used his sword, every time he left a sword mark on the stone tablet, it was as if he was reliving it and deepening his understanding. Bits and pieces of mysteries flowed from his heart and mind, allowing Chu Mu to have a deeper understanding of the way of the sword. This kind of understanding, in turn, would lead to the perfection of his way of the sword. It was a process that complemented each other. Chu Mu was completely immersed in it, unable to extricate himself. Not long after, the stone tablet rose again, reaching a height of 30 meters. More and more people reached the end of their time on the 6th level and automatically entered the 7th level. Therefore, there were more and more people on the 7th level. Although it didn't look very big, it didn't seem crowded at all. It was as if it would automatically expand because of the people entering. Of the people who entered the 7th level, a portion of them didn't have an outstanding comprehension of the 6th level's divine martial Tao tablet. This also meant that it would be very difficult for them to obtain a reward or a good reward. However, nothing was absolute. They had to fight for it to know the results. The entry of others didn't affect Chu Mu at all. Unless he was distracted or was deliberately disturbed, he would just ignore them. And because of what happened on the 6th level, on the 7th level, no one would take the initiative to disturb others. The consequences were unpredictable. Chu Mu's understanding of the 6th level of the way of the martial had reached a height of 93 meters. He was the highest, and the second place was far behind. This understanding, combined with his own way of the sword, became even more profound. This was something that completely belonged to him. 10 times the height of 30 meters increased to 40 meters, and then to 50 meters. Chu Mu's speed of ascension began to slow down. This was because the higher he went, the more pressure he had to bear. It was also more difficult to display the mysteries that he had learned. This display was completely different from a battle. The mysteries contained in each sword mark couldn't be the same. Otherwise, it would be ineffective. This required an incomparably strong foundation. If one didn't accumulate enough, it would be like a bottle that wasn't filled with water. Except for Chu-Mu, who had reached 60 meters. The highest of the others was only 40 meters. The gap was very obvious. More and more understanding emerged. Along with the 2 swords in Chu-Mu's hands, along with his 5 element swords, he didn't use any special sword techniques, nor did he use the Tao-seeking sword arts, all heaven sword styles, etc. It couldn't even be called a basic sword technique, because there was no order to each sword move. It was completely random. Dense sword marks, either parallel or crisscrossed, were all over the stone tablet. In the blink of an eye, Chu-Mu reached a height of 70 meters and continued to climb. His body floated in the air and even went up. He didn't do it deliberately. It was completely driven by the swords. At this moment, with the swords as the main force, Chu-Mu had a unique and wonderful understanding. 80 meters, 90 meters. Chu-Mu's body was still going up. The 2 swords were like 2 arms. Every sword mark seemed to be grasping the crevices of the steep mountain wall. 91 meters, 92 meters, 93 meters. Gradually, Chu-Mu began to feel powerless. He knew that this was because his understanding and accumulation were gradually being exhausted. He could only do his best. This was closely related to accumulation and foundation. There was no fluke. In fact, he didn't even use the slightest bit of luck. He had to show as much ability as he could. 94 meters. Chu-Mu's speed was getting slower and slower. His efficiency was also getting lower and lower. Finally, he reached a height of 99 meters. The 2 swords slashed and left 2 sword marks on the stone tablet. Chu-Mu's body also stopped as if he had reached the top. His whole body was about to fall. Using the last bit of his strength, the celestial 5 elements swords flew and slashed the stone tablet rapidly, leaving the last mark. His body fell and landed below the stone tablet. Chu-Mu heaved a sigh of relief. He kept the 7 swords in his body and looked up. The height of 99 meters gave Chu-Mu a sense of satisfaction. With this height and this kind of comprehension, I should be able to get a good reward. Chu-Mu muttered to himself. Just as he finished speaking, the sword marks on the stone tablet lit up one by one from the bottom to the top. The light flickered and became increasingly bright. However, it didn't disturb others. After all the sword marks lit up, the light spread to the entire stone tablet. The stone tablet shone brightly and turned into a bright and sharp sword light. It instantly broke through the sky and flew up. It was as if there was an invisible giant holding this 99-meter-long sword and thrusting it towards the sky. It directly pierced through the sky and created a hole. That hole rotated like a huge whirlpool, but only Chu-Mu could see it. Under the rotation of the whirlpool, the huge sword broke through the sky and entered the whirlpool. Finally, it disappeared. In the center of the whirlpool, a light appeared and quickly fell in front of Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu touched the light. The light instantly melted and turned into a simple book. The cover of the book was dark brown. It looked very ancient and had an aura of vicissitudes. There were 4 very ancient words on the cover. They weren't the words that were circulating now. Moreover, they contained a unique charm. These 4 ancient words, Chu-Mu recognized them for a while and deciphered them. Chaotic Heaven, Sword Scripture. When he deciphered the 4 ancient words on the cover, Chu-Mu knew what it was. Chaotic Heaven, Sword Scripture. This was the experience and insight of the master of the god's relic. All of his experience and insight were integrated into this ancient book. Chu-Mu's hands trembled because of excitement. This was the sword cultivation experience of a demigod sovereign. Even if the demigod sovereign wasn't a real sword cultivator and didn't major in sword cultivation, his understanding of sword cultivation must have reached an extremely profound level. The current Chu-Mu couldn't compare with him. This chaotic heaven sword scripture would bring a lot of help to Chu-Mu. This was his feeling. With a trace of impatience, Chumu opened the cover of the chaotic Heaven Sword Scripture. His eyes fell on the first page. Sword cultivator, resolute, resolute, has upright wind, sharp edge, spirit, mysterious and unfathomable. Chapter 2278. The first page after the cover of the Celestial Sword Scripture was the general outline. It was very mysterious, and Chumu felt like he was in the clouds. However, his accumulation of swordsmanship was extremely deep, so it didn't take long for him to slowly comprehend it. He flipped it open again and entered the main content. After reading for a while, Chumu put the Celestial Sword Scripture away. The Celestial Sword Scripture recorded a demigod sovereign's understanding of swordsmanship. Some parts were lower than what Chumu had grasped, some were equal, and some far exceeded. This meant that even if Chumu had reached the sovereign realm, he could still read and comprehend the Celestial Sword Scripture. Next, Chumu had to make a choice. Would he continue to stay in God's relic or leave? He was not in a hurry to make a choice. These two choices seemed simple, but they actually had deeper implications. Thinking back to his previous actions in God's relic, the 1st to 5th levels were dangerous, but not fatal. The 6th and 7th levels were completely beneficial. This meant that if he continued to stay in God's relic, he would most likely not stay on the 7th level. He would go to other places, which could mean slaughter, death, and other things. As for God's relic, this was even easier to understand. Leave God's relic and return to the place you entered. After thinking about it, Chumu decided to continue to stay in God's relic. If there were dangers, there would definitely be rewards. The moment he made his decision, Chumu once again experienced the feeling of time and space spinning. When he suddenly woke up, he quickly looked around and found himself standing on a snowy mountain. The snowy mountain was vast and white, and it stretched for tens of thousands of miles. Looking down, he could only see frosty white fog. Looking up, he could also see frosty white fog. It seemed that he was halfway up the mountain. The information in Chumu's mind told him that this place was called Heavenly Snow Mountain. Those who chose to continue to stay in God's relic would enter Heavenly Snow Mountain. The purpose of entering Heavenly Snow Mountain was to search for treasures. Yes, there were many treasures on Heavenly Snow Mountain. They were all treasures left behind by the demigod sovereign. From this point of view, coming to the Heavenly Snow Mountain to search for treasures was another benefit. However, this benefit was not that easy to obtain because there was a great deal of danger in this place, and killing was not forbidden. As he clenched his fists in the air, the green sword light and the purple sword light condensed and transformed into the Heavenly Wind Sword and Heavenly Thunder Sword. In the next moment, the Heavenly 5 elemental swords also condensed around him and floated 10 meters away to protect Chumu. This was enough to form the first line of attack and defense. Chumu realized that in the Heavenly Snow Mountain, his spiritual energy was restricted and could not leave his body. Fortunately, the Imperial Sword technique was not affected. In addition, it seemed that he could not fly and could only climb with his own feet. Chumu should be the first person to enter the Heavenly Snow Mountain. He had to make full use of the time difference to obtain the treasures. It was true that there were treasures in the Heavenly Snow Mountain, but they were not everywhere. One had to search for them on their own. Not long after, Chumu found a fiery red spiritual herb. It had 3 leaves and a red flower that emitted a scorching heat. This was the blazing sunflower. It was said that it only grew in extremely cold places. Its medicinal properties were strong, and it was very beneficial to cultivators who cultivated the Tao of Fire. If it was refined into a blazing sun elixir, the effects would be even better. Chumu dug up the blazing sunflower and kept it in his space ring. As he continued to climb, Chumu found another spiritual herb every few days. They were all spiritual herbs that were beneficial to Great Emperor Realm cultivators. However, most of them were of the fire and ice attributes. Other than the spiritual herbs, Chumu also found some materials that could be used to forge weapons and secret treasures. Similarly, They were of the fire and ice attributes. The fire attributes in the heavenly snow mountain were purer because they had to fight against the chill of the heavenly snow mountain. On the other hand, the ice attributes were also purer because they were nourished by the heavenly snow mountain. Fire type can help me comprehend the great Tao of fire and can also be used to improve the fire swords of the heavens. Ice type can help me comprehend the great Tao of ice and can also improve the ice swords of the heavens. Currently, his all heavens swords had condensed the metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice, lightning, and star swords. It was an improvement compared to before. However, among the 9 swords, only the metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and star swords had reached the middle rank of Great Emperor Realm. The wind, ice, and lightning swords were still at the lower rank of Great Emperor Realm. Perhaps in this heavenly snow mountain, Chu Mu could find enough treasures to raise the rank of the myriad heavens ice swords. The second person entered the heavenly snow mountain, followed by the third and fourth person. More and more people entered the heavenly snow mountain. After a few breaths of time to digest the information that had appeared in their minds, these people began to move and search for the so-called treasures. Chu Mu found a cave. It was pitch black, and he could not see the end of the cave. It exuded a sense of eeriness, as if there was an unknown danger lurking within. Such a sacred mountain, such a cave, was full of attraction. Perhaps there would be some good treasures within. Chu Mu raised his perception to the maximum and strode into the cave. The cave was silent, dead silent. The more silent it was, the more vigilant Chu Mu became. He could feel that there was something dangerous in the air. After walking for a few thousand meters, the cave seemed to have no end. Drip, drip, a faint sound seemed to come from afar and entered Chu Mu's ears. It was intermittent, like the sound of water dripping, but it sounded more vigorous. Following the direction of the sound, Chu Mu increased his speed slightly, but he did not lower his vigilance. After walking for another few hundred meters, Chu Mu saw a flash of light. As he approached, he smelled a very unique fragrance. That fragrance was cold and refreshing, and when he breathed in, he felt as if there was a cold current flowing through his body. His whole spirit was lifted and refreshed. Drip, under the gaze of Chu Mu's sharp eyes, a stalagmite was hanging upside down in front of the light. From the end of the stalagmite, there was a drop of snow-white liquid that seemed to be made of jade. It then dripped down and fell into the small pool below, giving off a clear and vigorous sound. Without a doubt, this was a treasure. Chu Mu walked closer and stood at the edge of the small pool. The cool and refreshing fragrance constantly entered his nostrils and entered his body through his pores. The truth-seeking technique was naturally activated. Chu Mu knew that this was definitely a precious treasure, but he did not know what it was called. Although he was very knowledgeable, there were too many treasures in the myriad of worlds. He knew a lot, but there were even more that he did not know. Taking a little bit of the small pool into his mouth, he carefully tasted it. He only felt a burst of coldness explode in his mouth and instantly spread out, causing Chu Mu to become absent-minded. It was as if his whole body was immersed in a cold liquid, and there was an indescribable feeling. The truth-seeking technique was activated at a faster speed, and the great true will rotated rapidly. A real shadow appeared behind his back. Cold chalcedony, a heavenly treasure, a treasure unique to the heavenly snow mountain. It can purify all of one's energy and help in cultivation. A piece of information appeared in Chu Mu's mind. Before he could completely digest it, a burst of wind sound rang out, accompanied by an extreme sense of danger, causing Chu Mu's hair to stand on end. Without any hesitation, the life and death instinct that had been tempered thousands of times erupted. The myriad heavenly 5 elements, swords, instantly gathered, forming a shield behind him. With a bang, an intense sound like the rumbling of a drum, a huge force exploded. Chu Mu only felt his body sway, and his spiritual world was also attacked by an invisible force. The real shadow of the great true will behind him was also swaying incessantly. Taking advantage of the impact, Chu Mu took the opportunity to increase the distance between them. From the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of a figure. The wind and lightning sword slashed out, and the sword light dispersed the darkness. A sizzling sound rang out, causing one's hair to stand on end. Chu Mu's opponent was a python. Its entire body was snow white and covered with red spots. Its color was extremely beautiful, but this kind of beauty would not cause one to feel restricted. Instead, it would cause one's hair to stand on end. This python was as thick as a normal person's thigh. It coiled up in a circle, and its head was facing Chu Mu. Its scarlet tongue flickered in and out, and its pair of golden eyes were cold and emotionless, as if it was looking at its prey. As long as it was a heavenly treasure, there would definitely be a mutated beast guarding it. From the looks of it, if Chu Mu wanted to obtain the cold chalcedony, he would have to get rid of this python first. That attack just now let Chu Mu know that this python possessed a terrifying strength, and it would not be easy to deal with. In order to avoid any unexpected changes, Chu Mu executed the 8th layer of the immemorial sword seal, and under the 80% increase in sharpness, his strength became even more tyrannical. The sharpness of the myriad heavenly 5-element swords and the wind and lightning swords in his hands became even more shocking. Kill! Chu Mu struck out with his swords, and the python's head swayed, dodging the attack of the 2 swords. It suddenly shot towards Chu Mu, and at the same time, its tail fiercely whipped over, bringing along a violent gust of wind. It was fierce and direct, and carried with it a sure-kill move. The myriad heavenly 5-element swords turned into 5 different colored lights, and from different angles. They carried different powers and characteristics as they attacked the python. In an instant, it was as if there were 6 people attacking the python together. The swords that had reached the mid-grade emperor grade were even sharper and more shocking. All 5 swords landed on the python's body, but they did not break the python's body. Not only was its skin tough, but it was also very slippery, making it difficult to exert force on. After understanding this, Chu Mu's attack style began to change. To deal with different opponents, he had to use different methods. The myriad heavenly 5-element swords directly surrounded the python, and then the wind and lightning swords executed their ultimate moves. Wind sword kill, lightning sword kill, azure and purple sword light pierced through the air, and in the next breath, the myriad heavenly lightning swords in Chu Mu's right hand disappeared, and starlight swallowed and condensed into a sword. Myriad heavenly stars sword. With the mid-grade emperor grade myriad heavenly stars sword in hand, Huang Xiaolong slashed out one sword after another, turning into rays of starlight that slashed at the python's body. The myriad heavenly stars sword's power, along with the corrosive power of the starlight rays, caused damage to the python. The next sword was incomparably resplendent with starlight, like a meteor streaking across the sky, striking down in an instant. Starlight sword kill. The starlight sword light pierced through the sky and also broke the python's skin, piercing into its body. Chapter 2279. The python's life force was extremely tenacious. Even though its skin was pierced by the stellar sword strike and the terrifying energy invaded its body, it still continued to attack like a trapped beast, becoming even more berserk. Chu Mu used the Myriad Heavens Stellar Sword as his attack and the Myriad Heavens 5 Elemental Swords as his defense. While resisting the python's counterattack, he also injured the python further. He cut open its skin again and again, leaving behind wounds. The energy continued to wreak havoc in its body, weakening the python bit by bit. Suddenly, the Myriad Heavens 5 Elemental Swords shone brightly and gathered into a huge sword, falling down like a comet. 5 Elemental Sword Strike. 5 Elemental Sword Strike. It was the most powerful sword strike that Chu Mu had grasped so far. With one strike, it entered the python's wounds and instantly cut it into countless pieces. The python's head flew out and fell to the ground. Its forked tongue was still sticking out. Its fragmented golden eyes were still cold and emotionless. Its shattered body was still moving slightly. It was not completely dead, but it was no longer a threat. After killing the python and removing the threat, Chumu immediately appeared beside the cold chalcedony. He took out an empty jade bottle and absorbed the cold chalcedony into it. There was not much cold chalcedony in the small pond, but it was very heavy. A jade bottle that could hold 1/2 kilogram of water was filled to the brim with cold chalcedony. Chumu filled a total of 3 bottles with cold chalcedony. There was still a thin layer at the bottom, and Chumu did not let it go. He directly absorbed it and swallowed it into his stomach. A cool feeling instantly exploded in his body, rushing to his limbs and bones. Even his spiritual world was affected. The truth-seeking technique naturally started to circulate, and the great true will started to rotate faster and faster. It was as if there were thousands of soldiers and horses galloping at the same time. Their cries were endless, and it shook the heavens and earth. The great true wheel's shadow condensed behind his back. As it rotated, it seemed to move the heavens. Chumu's aura became stronger, more majestic and more pure. A kind of sharpness was revealed. Shortly after, as if something had been shattered, it suddenly surged and became even stronger. The grand true will behind him began to rotate and underwent a drastic change. It turned from 48 corners to 60 corners. This meant that the grand true will had also been upgraded. My cultivation is at the 2nd step Emperor realm, and my great true will has 60 edges. My strength is much stronger than the average 3rd step Emperor realm cultivator. Chumu was inwardly overjoyed. Ever since Huang Xiaolong had entered the primordial divinity battlefield, his cultivation had improved tremendously. Now his cultivation had risen from low-level 2nd step Emperor realm to high-level 2nd step Emperor realm, and from low-level 3rd step Emperor realm to high-level 3rd step Emperor realm. All of this was thanks to Chumu's extremely solid and perfect foundation, as well as the many opportunities that followed. Of course, without such a solid and perfect foundation, even with the many opportunities that followed, he would not have been able to improve so quickly. For example, 2 people were walking on the road. One of them was empty-handed, while the other was carrying a big cloth bag. Along the way, both of them would come across many good things. The empty-handed person could only take a little, while the person with the big cloth bag could take more. Although it was different from cultivation, the basic principle was the same. The difference between being prepared and being unprepared was the difference. The breakthrough in his cultivation and the increase in his strength made Chumu happy. At the very least, he would not encounter any bottlenecks before he reached the sovereign realm. Firstly, it was related to his cultivation realm, and secondly, it was related to his solid foundation. His cultivation had increased, and he had obtained a treasure like the cold chalcedony. Chumu looked around, but did not find any other good stuff. He quickly left the cave and climbed up the heavenly snow mountain. Not long after Chumu left the cave, another figure exuding a terrifying aura appeared outside the cave. He turned into a streak of lightning and entered the cave at lightning speed. A distance of several thousand meters was crossed in just a few breaths of time. This figure, covered in arcs of lightning, stood at the edge of the dried-up pool. He stared at the dried-up pool, then at the hanging stalagmite, and finally at the python that had been severed into several pieces and was completely dead. What a good treasure! It's a pity that someone else got it first. However, it should have been obtained not too long ago. Once I find you, this treasure will be mine. The person seemed to be talking to himself. His voice was somewhat hoarse and fierce. As soon as he finished speaking, the person turned into a streak of lightning and left the cave at lightning speed. Soon, he appeared outside the cave and chased after Chumu. On the heavenly snow mountain, no one could fly, but they could use movement skills to increase their speed. Chu Mu continued to climb as he consumed the cold chalcedony. Because he was not wholeheartedly focused on cultivating, he only consumed one drop at a time, allowing the cold chalcedony's energy to spread throughout his body. He circulated the truth-seeking technique, and the great true wheel roiled as it absorbed the cold chalcedony's energy. The 60-edged great true wheel's refining ability was even more shocking. Under the great true wheel's rotation, the cold chalcedony's energy was rapidly refined, turning into pure energy that spread to every part of Chu Mu's body, raising his cultivation little by little. The higher one's cultivation, the harder it was to raise one's cultivation. Chu Mu's cultivation had just broken through to the high-level second step Emperor realm, and he needed time to consolidate his cultivation. However, there was no time to do so in the heavenly snow mountain. He could only use this method to consolidate his cultivation, and the results were obvious. After he consolidated his cultivation, he would think about raising his cultivation. All of a sudden, Chu Mu frowned as he felt a sense of danger approaching. A sizzling sound was heard as a bolt of lightning shot out from behind him like an arrow leaving the bowstring. It carried with it the intent to kill. Chu Mu shifted his feet and executed the 4 directions, truth-seeking, steps 3rd stage, gaining a breath's worth of time to dodge the attack. Turning around, he mercilessly slashed out with his 2 swords, and 2 streaks of sword light pierced through the air. Hand over the treasures in the cave, and I, the Lightning Blade Emperor, will spare your life. A domineering voice entered Chu Mu's ears. Lightning crackled in the air, and Chu Mu could vaguely see a figure rapidly approaching him. This kind of aura had surpassed the 3rd step Emperor realm, reaching the peak of the 3rd step Emperor realm. A peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert was a strong opponent, and Chu Mu didn't dare to hold back. Sword light flashed between his eyebrows, and 8 streaks of sword light lit up. The 8th level of the immemorial sword seal increased his strength by 80%. Chu Mu's strength was already slightly higher than a high-level 3rd step Emperor realm expert, and with the 8th level of the immemorial sword seal, he could even fight a peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert to his heart's content. Even though his strength was not as strong as a peak 3rd step Great Emperor, he had the support of the dual swords and the heavenly 5 elemental swords under the Imperial God sword art. The gap between him and a peak 3rd step Great Emperor was not that big. Speaking of which, this was Chu Mu's first time fighting a peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert, and he couldn't help but feel excited. This peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert was a human, and he used a blade. His long blade was enshrouded in lightning arcs, and every slash of his blade was akin to a thunderbolt from the 9 heavens. It was extremely powerful, and it shattered the heavenly snow mountain's rocks and split open the snowy ground. Every slash from a peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert was extremely powerful, and Chu Mu had to use all his strength to deal with it. He tried to receive a slash head-on, but the overwhelming force sent him flying, and his 2 swords almost flew out of his hands. After dispersing the force, Chu Mu executed the combination of the 2nd and 3rd stages of the 4 directions truth-seeking steps, and dodged the other party's attack. His 2 swords attacked from different directions, and every slash from the myriad elements swords could kill a high-level 3rd step Emperor realm expert. Even a peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert wouldn't dare to underestimate such power. Thunder Shadow Slash. The peak 3rd step Emperor realm expert held his blade with both hands and slashed down, turning into a streak of lightning. It was so fast that Chu Mu couldn't catch it. He could only rely on his instincts that had been tempered by life and death experiences to control the myriad elements' swords to defend himself. He was sent flying in an instant. Lightning radiance slash. Another slash followed. This time, the speed of the slash wasn't as fast, but its power was even more violent. Wind sword annihilation. Lightning sword annihilation. Chu Mu hurriedly slashed out with his sword, and the two ultimate moves collided with the lightning radiant slash. In terms of absolute strength, Chu Mu was ultimately inferior to his opponent. He had many tricks up his sleeves, but he could only hold on for a short while. True mystery of human Tao. Left with no choice, Chu Mu could only execute another secret art. Executing the true mystery of human Tao, the grand true chakra revolved, and it directly stimulated 10% of Chu Mu's potential. After this potential was stimulated, it rapidly transformed into waves of energy that surged through his body, and Chu Mu felt like his body was filled with air. Tyrannical energy overflowed in all directions, and the white snow beneath his feet was pushed away, revealing the black mountain rocks beneath him. Chu Mu launched another counterattack. Under the true mystery of human Tao, his strength was incomparably strong, and it gave Chu Mu the ability to fight against a limit third step great emperor expert. The two swords were violent, and they were densely packed together. It was like a torrential rain, like meteorites falling from the sky, and like endless tides. The limit third step great emperor expert who used the saber was shocked. He could tell that this person had executed two secret arts to possess such strength. Under the combination of the two secret arts, the power was shocking, and it significantly increased the opponent's strength. He was actually able to fight against the limit third step great emperor for a short while. So what? Secret arts can't last for long. Moreover, you have a secret art, and so do I. With a low roar, the limit third step great emperor, who didn't intend to use his secret art, immediately used it. Lightning exploded, and it was as if a bolt of lightning had struck down from the sky, striking his body. Instantly, it was as if the god of thunder had descended. His aura increased by 50%, and his strength became even more terrifying. Chu Mu's expression changed slightly. This person's strength was already very strong, and now that he had executed his secret art, he became even stronger. There was no way Chu Mu could defeat him. The immemorial sword seal could last longer, but the true mystery of human Tao couldn't. The difference is too big. I can't defeat him. I can only retreat temporarily. Chu Mu thought. He executed the destruction of the heavens and earth 5 elements sword strike. This sword strike was extremely powerful, and it brought a serious threat to his opponent. He had no choice but to defend with all his strength. Chu Mu seized this fleeting opportunity and casted worlds end near at hand's second stage, instantly escaping and flying away. He then casted worlds end near at hand's third stage, creating a gap of a breath. Chapter 2280. Exterminating Heaven and Earth was the 16th move of the Tao-seeking sword art. It didn't have the profoundness of the 15th move, revolving samsara, but it had the most direct, destructive power. It focused on destroying the target and had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Using exterminating heaven and earth to drive the 5 elements sword attack was a huge challenge for Chu Mu. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult for him to do so. However, the true mystery of human Tao provided him with endless power, allowing him to squander it as much as he wanted within a certain period of time without worrying about insufficient power. The power of exterminating heaven and earth, 5 elements, sword attack was unparalleled. With a slash, the limit third step great emperor expert's face turned solemn as he prepared for battle. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chu Mu had already left. The terrifying explosion rumbled and shook the surroundings as though it was going to destroy the heavenly snow mountain. However, the heavenly snow mountain was extremely sturdy and didn't show any signs of being shaken. By the time all the energy was cleared, Chu Mu had already disappeared without a trace. Even his aura was affected by the explosion and became chaotic, making it even harder to find him. "You won't be able to escape from me, the lightning saber emperor." The limit third step great emperor expert shouted angrily and chased after Chu Mu again. However, since he had lost track of his aura, it wouldn't be so easy to catch up to Chu Mu. After stopping the circulation of the true mystery of human Tao, the boundless power in his body also retreated like the tide. A feeling of emptiness immediately appeared all over his body and disappeared rapidly with the rotation of the great true wheel. After using the true mystery of human Tao, Chu Mu couldn't use it a second time in the next 7 to 10 days. Otherwise, it would affect his potential and destroy his foundation. However, his current strength was enough for the time being. At least he could protect himself. Lightning Saber Emperor. As Chu Mu climbed up the heavenly snow mountain, he repeated, "There isn't such a title on the Earth Carnage ranking. Could it be that this person's strength isn't qualified to be listed on the Earth Carnage ranking?" If his conjectures were true, then how powerful would the strengths of those powerhouses ranked on the Earth Carnage proclamation be? A mere person who wasn't qualified to be listed on the Earth Carnage ranking was enough to force him to use all means and escape in the end. What would happen if it was an expert on the Earth Carnage ranking? Thinking about it, Chu Mu felt an inexplicable excitement. Accompanying the excitement was a sense of danger. It wasn't very strong, but from the corner of Chu Mu's eyes he caught a glimpse of a cold glint shooting from the side. It was extremely fast, cutting through the air with a chi-chi sound. At a glance, Chu Mu knew who had attacked him. "That's great. It saves me the trouble of looking for you." As if he was talking to himself, Chu Mu's figure turned around, and the wind and lightning dual swords attacked fiercely. They collided with the opponent's sword light without any fear. The green and purple sword light instantly destroyed the incoming sword light. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Under the incredulous gaze of the opponent, the green and purple sword light slashed through the opponent's sword light and sent him flying dozens of meters away, falling down the heavenly snow mountain. Die! With a deep growl, Chu Mu thrust out the heavenly thunder sword with his right hand, unleashing a purple thunderbolt sword light that pierced through the void. Lightning sword annihilation. Even a high-level third-step Emperor Realm expert would have to use their full strength to defend against this attack, not to mention a mid-level third-step Emperor Realm expert. Moreover, a mid-level third-step Emperor Realm expert was at a disadvantage. The purple thunderbolt sword light was merciless, and it was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It pierced through the mid-level third-step Emperor Realm expert's body in an instant, and he didn't even have the chance to execute the heavenly soldier transformation. During the Star Beast Tide, Chu Mu's strength was insufficient. However, Chu Mu's cultivation had broken through, and his strength had increased. In terms of absolute strength, he was far inferior to Chu Mu in terms of skills. Back then, before one of them could die, the Sovereign Realm expert had stopped them. Both of them had the intention to kill each other when they met. It was precisely because of this that the Soldier Tribe's Emperor Realm expert had attacked when he saw Chu Mu. However, he hadn't expected that Chu Mu would kill him with a single sword strike, thus ending their grudge. After killing the Soldier Tribe's Emperor Realm expert, his spatial ring naturally became Chu Mu's spoils of war. After a quick check, Chu Mu discovered that the Soldier Tribe's Emperor Realm expert had also obtained some treasures from the heavenly snow mountain, but they couldn't compare to Chu Mu's. After swallowing another drop of cold chalcedony, Chu Mu continued to climb upwards. After refining drop after drop of cold chalcedony, Chu Mu's cultivation had stabilized at the high-level second step Emperor Realm. Next, he would start to raise his cultivation. After refining the cold chalcedony, Huang Xiaolong's cultivation speed was obvious. It was much faster than his normal cultivation speed. Perhaps, after refining all of the cold chalcedony, Huang Xiaolong's cultivation would reach new heights. As Huang Xiaolong continued to climb upwards, Chu Mu discovered that the higher he climbed, the higher the chance of finding treasures. However, treasures like the cold chalcedony were extremely rare. He could be considered lucky to have found one. After some time, Chu Mu was sure that he had climbed for a long time. According to his speed, he should have climbed very far. Even if the heavenly snow mountain was 10,000 zhang tall, he should have reached the top by now. However, when he looked up, he still couldn't see the end of the heavenly snow mountain. Moreover, after entering the heavenly snow mountain, there was no information about leaving the heavenly snow mountain. Chu Mu didn't care too much about it. There was bound to be a way to leave, but the time wasn't right. Before that, it was better to collect as many treasures as possible. The heavenly snow mountain exuded a mysterious aura. Even though it was faint, one would benefit from it if they stayed there for a long time. Master, the all-heaven snow sword is successfully condensed. Lil Tian's voice sounded. Good. Upon hearing this, Chu Mu revealed a smile. The wind sword in his left hand disappeared. Immediately after, snowflakes danced in the air. As the snow-white light flickered, it exuded a sharp sharpness. As it condensed, a snow-white longsword appeared, exuding a biting chill. This was the 10th All-Heavens sword. Every additional All-Heavens sword represented that Chu Mu's All-Heavens sword way was further perfected. Master, the All-Heavens ice sword is also slowly improving. Lil Tian said again. It was very happy. The more All-Heavens sword was condensed, the more its spirituality would increase. The higher the grade of the All-Heavens sword, the more its spirituality would increase. It was naturally very happy. Regarding this, Chu Mu was also very happy. The Great Tao of Ice and the Great Tao of Snow were both independent Great Taos. However, there were similarities between the two. Therefore, it was often easier for those who comprehended the Great Tao of Snow to comprehend the Great Tao of Ice. By the same logic, the All-Heavens Ice Sword was successfully condensed. Under such an environment, the All-Heavens Ice Sword also gained some benefits and was closer to the mid-Great Emperor grade. However, the difference between each rank of a Great Emperor rank sword was very clear. If he wanted to raise it, it wouldn't be easy. Just like the cultivation of a Great Emperor rank expert. Chu Mu didn't dare hope that the Heavenly Ice Sword would be able to reach the Middle Emperor rank in a short period of time. For the current Chu Mu, a mid-Great Emperor grade sword was already somewhat insufficient. As he walked, Chu Mu's footsteps did not stop. However, the sword in his hand flicked gently. From under the white snow, he picked up a stone. The stone was oval-shaped and completely ice blue. It exuded traces of origin energy fluctuations. Ice origin stone. On the heavenly snow mountain, there were indeed origin stones. However, most of them were ice origin stones and snow origin stones. Occasionally, there would be fire origin stones. Other than that, there was nothing else. Lil Tian, absorb it. Chu Mu said. The ice origin stone in his hand was immediately controlled by Lil Tian. The energy within it rapidly flowed into Chu Mu's body. Like an ice-blue mist, it contained a mystery and nourished the All-Heavens Ice Sword. The energy contained in the corresponding origin stone could be used to improve the corresponding All-Heavens Sword. The effect was very obvious. If Chu Mu could obtain enough star origin stones, then he could refine the All-Heavens Star Sword and cause a qualitative change. The so-called qualitative change was to transform the Great Tao of Stars that the All-Heavens Star Sword originally contained into the aura of star origin. This was a kind of energy that was between Great Tao and origin. It was like the transition between Great Tao and origin. It was stronger than Great Tao, but weaker than origin. As he continued to climb, Chu Mu discovered another treasure. It was an ice attribute, spiritual herb. Spiritual herbs could be directly consumed, but if they were refined into pills, the effects would be even more obvious. Chu Mu planned to bring it back and find someone to refine it into pills. Only then would he not waste the energy contained within. After some time, Chu Mu's sword picked out a snow origin stone. He discovered that the higher he climbed, the greater the possibility of encountering an origin stone. One origin stone after another was picked out by Chu Mu. Under Lil Tian's guidance, he absorbed them one by one, constantly improving the All Heavens Ice Sword and All Heavens Snow Sword. Before long, Chumu saw a figure. This person dug out a crystal from the snow. This crystal emitted clear fluctuations of ice origin energy. Chumu glanced at it, and his gaze was immediately attracted. This was because he discovered that this was not an ice origin stone. Although it was not an ice origin stone, it emitted clear fluctuations of ice origin energy. This was an ice origin crystal. The ice origin crystal was a higher grade treasure than the ice origin stone. It contained the true power of the ice origin crystal and not just its aura. The difference between the ice origin crystal and the ice origin stone was like the difference between the great emperor realm and the minor sovereign realm. Chumu was very tempted, but that person sensed it and was very vigilant. After obtaining the ice origin crystal, he immediately put it away and left rapidly. If it was someone else, they might have chased after him directly. However, Chumu did not do so. He had his own principles when doing things. If someone else found something, it belonged to them. Even if he wanted something, he would obtain it through a transaction. Of course, if someone wanted to snatch something that he had obtained, the outcome would be death. If he wanted to make a transaction, he would be one step too late. That person was not weak. He was a third step great emperor and was very vigilant. After obtaining the ice origin crystal, he immediately left. Now there was no trace of him. Look for it yourself, Chumu said inwardly. If someone else could find an ice origin crystal, it meant that he could also find one. If he could obtain an ice origin crystal and absorb it, perhaps the All Heavens Ice Sword could be improved. Chapter 2281. It wasn't that the heavenly snow mountain didn't have a peak. It was just that it was too high and it was difficult to reach in a short period of time. Those who were stronger would be able to reach the peak faster and obtain better treasures. Those who were weaker were still working hard in the middle and lower parts of the heavenly snow mountain. They would fight and kill each other for treasures. They would also encounter snow beasts that were unique to the heavenly snow mountain. For example, the python that Chumu had killed was one of the snow beasts. Some snow beasts were strong while some were weak. However, even the weakest snow beast was at the great emperor realm. If one wanted to obtain something, he would have to bear the consequences or dangers. Chumu's sword flickered in the snow and a light flashed. It was a snow-white crystal that emitted pure origin energy. Chumu's eyes were filled with excitement when he saw it. Snow origin crystal. Snow origin crystal could be used by great emperors. However, one had to be at the peak of the third step great emperor realm. Lesser sovereign realm experts could also use it. It could be used to comprehend the origin of snow and assist in the cultivation of snow origin. To Chumu, the use of the snow origin crystal was to refine the All Heavens Snow Sword and improve it. It would also improve and perfect the snow origin crystal in the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin. Little Tian, absorb it. Chumu exhaled and said, there was no doubt about the value of the snow origin crystal. However, he still had to absorb it in the end to improve the All Heavens Snow Sword. Yes, Master. Little Tian was even more excited than Chumu. Under Little Tian's power, the snow origin crystal turned into liquid and entered Chumu's body. It was slowly absorbed by the All Heavens Snow Sword. The difficulty of absorbing the snow origin crystal was much greater than absorbing the snow origin stone. It was impossible to completely absorb it in a short period of time. I hope I can find more origin crystals. Chumu looked up and muttered to himself. He still couldn't see the end. If he could find more snow origin crystals and ice origin crystals, he could upgrade the All Heavens Snow Swords and All Heavens Ice Swords. It wouldn't be difficult to upgrade them to the Great Emperor level. If he could find more, he could even give some to Shui Yinling to help her learn. Thinking of Snow Silver Spirit, Chumu's eyes flashed with gentleness. He had not seen her for many years. He wondered how she was doing now. Shui Yinling was going back to the Snow Clan. According to her, she was going to stay for a long time. It seemed to have something to do with the demigod sovereign of the Snow Clan. Maybe she was going to receive the real inheritance. The next time we meet, perhaps he will become even stronger. Chu Mu thought to himself, I can't lose to him. Thinking of this, Chu Mu was even more motivated, and his footsteps seemed to quicken a bit. Chu Mu refined the ice chalcedony drop by drop. His cultivation level rose little by little. Chu Mu climbed steadily. He met other people from time to time. But if he didn't find any treasures, nobody would take the initiative to attack him. If he found a treasure and someone happened to see it, there would be a bloody battle. Chu Mu held 2 swords in his hands. The chi of the origin filled the air. At first glance, one could see that the 2 swords in Chu Mu's hands were extraordinary, but his strength was also terrifying. As he climbed and reaped, he didn't know how much time had passed. Finally, after Chu Mu charged through the wisps of fog, he looked up and was instantly stunned. The top of the heavenly snow mountain, which he couldn't see the end of, was faintly discernible. He could see the peak. It was like seeing a lighthouse in the dark sea. It was like a guide. It gave people a kind of invisible strength. Maybe there are more treasures at the peak. Chu Mu thought to himself. Not all treasures were useful to him, but even if they were useless to him, there would always be people who wanted them after he obtained them, and he could trade them for treasures that he needed. There were many people who shared the same thoughts as Chu Mu. When they saw the outline of the heavenly snow mountain's peak, they were all extremely excited. It was as if their goal was right in front of them. They did not know when, but climbing to the peak of the heavenly snow mountain had unknowingly become everyone's dream and goal. Although the heavenly snow mountain was very good, and there were many treasures, the feeling of not knowing the end of the mountain was slowly affecting them. Some people with weaker wills found it hard to bear. Chu Mu, with his wills, was also affected unknowingly. He didn't even notice it, let alone the others. Climbing the heavenly snow mountain didn't consume much of their energy, because they could recover quickly. It was just that the tiredness in their hearts accumulated bit by bit, making them feel tired. If it accumulated too much, it would explode out of control. Fortunately, they saw the peak of the heavenly snow mountain and saw an invisible hope. It was as if the tiredness had found an outlet. Their speed seemed to have increased a lot because of this. The first person rushed to the peak. He saw 10 balls of light floating in different positions. The colors of the lights were different, and the aura they emitted was completely different, but they were all very strong. The treasures are all mine, the person said in a low voice. His voice was very excited. His body flashed, and he immediately rushed to the nearest ball of light. He tried to grab it with both hands, but the ball of light blocked him. The force rebounded, and the person's hand was knocked away. At this moment, the second and third figures also rushed to the top of the mountain. When they saw the 10 balls of light, they were slightly startled. They immediately attacked and tried to snatch the balls of light, but they encountered the same situation as the first person. They were repelled. More and more people appeared on the peak. Once they saw the 10 balls of light, they immediately tried to snatch them. It was chaos. Saber Mountain. There was a loud roar. Countless saber lights flashed and condensed into mountains that descended instantly. This was the absolute art of the Saber Mountain Great Emperor. The Saber Mountain Great Emperor was the 15th expert on the Earth Carnage ranking. The people who rushed to the peak first were basically the experts on the Earth Carnage ranking. They were all extremely strong and didn't show any mercy. The Blood Sword Emperor, Dong Shui, was among them. His blood sword brought about a blood-colored sword light that covered the sky. Chu Mu hadn't reached the peak, but he wasn't far away. A sword light pierced through the air and shot over. He shifted his feet and dodged instantly. He almost became a fish that got caught in the crossfire. Terrifying strength. Looking at the battle above and feeling that powerful aura, Chu Mu thought to himself, the strength of the Earth Carnage rankings experts was indeed very terrifying. At least to the current him, it was so. With so many Earth Carnage rankings experts having an intense battle and showing no mercy, there must be a treasure that moves them at the peak. Chu-Mu analyzed. Since that's the case, I'll go up and take a look as well. Perhaps, when facing the Earth Carnage rankings experts, Chu-Mu wasn't a match. But it didn't mean that he had to surrender. A treasure that could make the Earth Carnage rankings experts go all out to fight for it was definitely extraordinary. Perhaps it might be of great use to him. Chu-Mu withdrew his aura and went up using a more secretive route to avoid the impact of the aftershocks. Not long later, he arrived at the peak and saw the 10 balls of light with different colors. The aura of Source. A hint of excitement flashed across Chu-Mu's face. The aura of Source was different from the aura of Source stones and Source crystals. It was purer, because that was the Source cultivated by a sovereign realm expert. It was the true Source. No matter what kind of source it would be of great benefit to Chu-Mu. No wonder it would cause these Earth Carnage rankings experts to fight for it without mercy. Chu-Mu was very moved. As long as he obtained a piece of Source and refined and absorbed it, his cultivation would definitely be able to increase by quite a bit. To the All-Heaven Swords, it would also have an even more obvious effect. Adjusting his breathing, he tried his best to calm himself down. Circulating the truth-seeking technique, under the rotation of the great true wheel, power spread throughout his entire body. He was like a hunter lying in ambush at the side, waiting for an opportunity. If he were to charge in like this, he might become the target of public criticism. With his current strength, even if it was a one-on-one battle, he would not be a match for any Earth Carnage rankings expert, let alone a group of Earth Carnage rankings experts. Those 10 balls of light were weakened under the continuous impact of power and became fainter and fainter. From the looks of it, the source within the balls of light would be revealed. Chu-Mu stared at the ball of light that was closest to him. That ball of light was white. It was not the white of snow, nor was it the white of ice. Instead, it was a kind of white of light. From the aura of that ball of light, Chu-Mu could determine that it was the light source. That layer of light on the outside was naturally the protection of the source. Only by removing the protection would one be able to obtain the source within. Otherwise, one would be rebounded. This was something that Chu-Mu could see very clearly. Under the continuous bombardment of energy, the light outside the light source continued to weaken. It became fainter and fainter, looking like it would dissipate at any moment. Chu-Mu stared at it intently. In his eyes, there was only the light source left. At the instant when the last trace of light outside the light source disappeared, many people were agitated. It was not only Chu-Mu who was lying in ambush. There were even more. All of them took out their methods and burst forth with their fastest speed. They instantly shot out and grabbed at that light source. Damn it! The actions of these people immediately infuriated the Earth Carnage rankings experts. Terrifying attacks were launched, immediately injuring a few of them and killing them. My chance is here. Muttering to himself, Chu-Mu made his move. With a flash, he executed the second level of the world's near-at-hand body. He instantly traversed thousands of meters of space and appeared beside the light source to retrieve it. Leave behind the source. Kill. Chu-Mu's actions instantly became the target of public criticism. Countless attacks were launched, and every single one of them was sufficient to kill him. Not panicking in the face of danger, Chu-Mu's strength did not slow down in the slightest. His figure flashed again, and time seemed to have paused for an instant. The difference of a breath allowed Chu-Mu to obtain a breath of time. Third level of the world's near-at-hand body. Second level of the world's near-at-hand body. Exploding forth and exceeding the limits, Chu-Mu's figure broke away from the crowd's attack range and rapidly flew towards the heavenly snow mountain. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the eyes of the crowd. Chapter 2282. On the heavenly snow mountain peak, the light source landed in Chu-Mu's hands. There were still 9 balls of light source that hadn't been taken away. Those who were eyeing the light source reacted instantly and fought for the remaining 9 balls of light source. However, there was an expert from the Earth Carnage ranking who did the opposite. He stared closely at Chu-Mu and unleashed his speed. He turned into a stream of light and rapidly chased after Chu-Mu. Sword Emperor Radiance. He was ranked 37th on the Earth Carnage ranking. The Sword Emperor Radiance was a sword cultivator that focused on the great Tao of light. His speed was extremely fast, and so was his sword. Furthermore, he possessed astonishing penetrative power. The light source had a fatal attraction to the Sword Emperor Radiance, who focused on the great Tao of light. If he could obtain the light source, he would be able to comprehend the profoundness within. Then he would be able to convert the profoundness within and break through his current limit to become a minor dominator. The simplest method was to refine the light source and become a minor dominator. Of course, between the two methods, the Sword Emperor Radiance would choose the first as it was more suitable for him and had more potential. However, no matter if it was the first or second method, there was a prerequisite. He had to obtain the light source first. Chu-Mu's speed was very fast, but the Sword Emperor Radiance was even faster. 1 in front and 1 behind, 1 fleeing and 1 chasing. Chu-Mu realized that he seemed to be on the run recently. The reason was because he wasn't strong enough. He flew down the heavenly snow mountain rapidly. The light source had already been kept by Chu-Mu. This was a treasure that he had snatched and couldn't possibly hand it over to others. However, the Sword Emperor Radiance was extremely fast and was getting closer. That speed and sharpness brought about an obvious threat to Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu took out a piece of Sword Tao Snow Jade. This was one of the trump cards that Xuet Yinling gave him. Originally, he didn't want to use it. After crushing the Sword Tao Snow Jade, the energy within was activated and wrapped around Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu felt a powerful energy surging through his body. After that, his speed increased tremendously. This was the speed of a 3rd step Great Emperor. The Sword Emperor Radiance was originally about to catch up to Chu-Mu. However, he realized that Chu-Mu's speed had increased tremendously. He couldn't help but be frustrated. You can escape, the Sword Emperor of Radiance thought to himself. He vowed to catch up to Chu-Mu and kill him to take back the light source origin. This would determine whether he could break through to the sovereign realm in a short period of time. It could be said that he had reached the limit of his potential in the Great Emperor realm. His foundation was extremely solid and there was no more room for improvement. The next step was to make a breakthrough. However, he had been stuck at the limit of 3rd step Great Emperor realm for many years, and he had not found the opportunity to make a breakthrough. Becoming a Great Emperor was easy, but becoming a sovereign was hard. This was something that everyone knew. How many peerless geniuses were stuck at the limits of the Emperor realm for their entire lives, unable to break through? The origin of light would definitely allow him to become a lesser sovereign in a few short years. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light was naturally very tempted. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light was at the limit of 3rd step Great Emperor realm, and he mainly cultivated the great Tao of light. Speed was one of his specialties. In terms of speed, it was hard to find someone who could match up to him among the 3rd step Great Emperor realm experts. It could be said that the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light's overall strength was around 30 in the entire Earth Carnage ranking. However, in terms of speed, he could be in the top 10 or even top 5. Chu-Mu used a piece of Sword Tao Snow Jade to increase his speed to the limit of 3rd step Great Emperor realm. However, he was only slightly faster than ordinary 3rd step Great Emperors and couldn't be compared to the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light. In such a situation, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light would catch up to him soon. Should he fight? Chu-Mu wasn't afraid. However, he knew that his current strength wasn't enough to compete with experts on the Earth Carnage ranking. He wouldn't be a match for the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light in a fight. If I am given some time to completely refine and absorb the light source, I won't lose to anyone in the Great Emperor realm. even if it's the number one on the Earth Carnage ranking. I have the confidence to compete with him. Chu Mu thought to himself. It was a pity that the current time didn't allow him to refine the light source. Refining the light source was different from absorbing the Origin Stone's origin crystal. Lil Tian couldn't help, and he could only do it himself. It would be best if he did it wholeheartedly. That would require a relatively quiet and safe environment. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light continued his pursuit, and the distance between him and Chu Mu was getting shorter. Shortly after, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light clenched his right hand, and the flowing light, translucent sword appeared in his hand. The sword was long and thin, and was filled with strange patterns. It was profound and unfathomable. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light radiated a mysterious aura. With a gentle shake of his wrist, the sword hummed and pierced forward ferociously. The sword turned into a flowing light and pierced through the sky. In an instant, it pierced towards Chu Mu at an even faster speed. A hair-raising feeling and an incomparably strong sense of danger caused Chu Mu to be greatly alarmed. This sword was too fast and incomparably sharp. It was simply impossible to dodge. Chu Mu knew that with his current strength, he wouldn't be able to defend against the sword. He took out the second snow jade of Sword Dao and crushed it. Instantly, a protective ring appeared around Chu Mu and protected him firmly. At the same time, the extreme sword light pierced through the sky and pierced the protective ring. The protective ring resisted the sword light for a breath's time. Chu Mu seized the opportunity to execute the second stage of World's End near at hand body and appeared further away. The protective ring that could defend against an attack from a peak third step Great Emperor couldn't defend against a sword from the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light because the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light strength was far beyond an ordinary peak third step Great Emperor. However, although the Snow Jade of Sword Dao wasn't able to defend against the sword completely, it had bought a breath's time for Chu Mu to escape. The last Snow Jade of Sword Dao was in his hand. At such a time, no matter what, Chu Mu had to fight for time and opportunity until the very last moment. The competition on the mountain peak was getting more and more intense. Those who obtained the origin would either be severely injured or use all means to escape. As long as they could escape alive, they would be able to use the origin to make a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm and become a sovereign. Under the intense competition, the origin was snatched away one by one until the last piece was left. The competition was getting more intense. Kill! Chu Mu roared and locked onto the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light. He crushed the Snow Jade of Sword Dao and turned it into a snow-white sword light. It complemented the chilliness of the heavenly snow mountain and slashed at the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light as though it was going to split the heavenly snow mountain apart. The power of this sword was equivalent to a peak third step emperor's full power attack. Sword cultivators were originally adept at attacking. Therefore, the Flowing Light Sword Emperor didn't dare to underestimate this sword. However, he didn't need to pay too much attention to it either. The flowing light piercing sword was raised, and a sword light broke through the air, shattering the snow-white sword light. This process gave Chu Mu another breath of time to escape even further. However, this one breath's time was just an extra breath's time. If there weren't any other opportunities, he would have to fight with the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light. However, he had used the true secret of human Tao once and hadn't fully recovered. If he used it again, it might cause some damage to his foundation. You won't be able to escape. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light said again. His voice was sharp and pierced Chu Mu's eardrums like a sharp sword. Chu Mu's expression didn't change. He continued to use his fastest speed to descend the heavenly snow mountain. The competition at the peak of the mountain had reached its final moment. An expert on the Earth Carnage ranking had obtained the last origin. He executed a secret technique and burned a portion of his lifespan to escape rapidly. As for the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light, he chased after Chu Mu. The flowing light, translucent sword light revolved and attacked with all his might. It was as though he wanted to shatter the sky and shatter Chu Mu. This sword was unblockable. The 5 elemental swords formed the first line of defense. However, Chumu wasn't sure if he could withstand it. Soon enough, he would find out. This sword was a sword attack that the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light released in anger. It was extremely powerful and could kill an ordinary limit of the 3rd step Great Emperor Realm Expert. This sword attack directly hit the defense set up by the 5 elemental swords. Under the terrifying power, the 5 elemental swords were scattered. Chumu felt a piercing pain in his mental world as though he was pierced by the sword. His expression changed slightly. The terrifying power penetrated through and landed on his body. It instantly broke through Chumu's 2nd layer of defense and pierced through his skin and into his body. It pierced through Chumu's tough body. Fortunately, it didn't hit any of his vital points. The Sword Emperor of Flowing Light's next sword attack followed closely. This sword attack was aimed at Chumu's head. He wanted to kill Chumu in one strike. The shadow of death enveloped him. I can only use the true mystery of human Tao again. Chumu thought to himself. He could always find a chance to recover from the damage to his foundation. No matter how difficult it was better than being killed. There was only hope if he was alive. Just as he was about to use the true mystery of human Tao, Chumu's face suddenly flashed with joy. In the next moment, under the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light's sword attack, his figure instantly disappeared. That sword attack pierced through the heavenly snow mountain and left behind a finger-sized hole. You actually left. You can't escape, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light said again. In the next moment, his figure also disappeared. It turned out that after the 10 origins were obtained, one could leave the heavenly snow mountain and God's relic. When Chumu got the chance to leave, he naturally left instantly. When he appeared outside God's relic, he immediately took out the matchless flying ship and entered it. He activated his speed and flew towards the primordial spirit battlefield. Just as Chumu's matchless flying ship flew out of God's relic, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light also appeared outside God's relic. He locked onto the matchless flying ship and took out his flying ship to chase after it. His flying ship's speed wouldn't be slower than the matchless flying ship. A chase immediately took place outside God's relic. For their own benefits and to cultivate to a higher level, no one would hold back. With the same speed and Chumu taking the initiative, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light could forget about catching up. However, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light didn't have the slightest intention of giving up and continued to chase. Inside the matchless flying ship, Chumu's injuries were healing bit by bit. In the wound, the Sword Emperor of Flowing Light's Flowing Light sword intent was continuously destroying Chumu's body. Under the power of the Great True Wheel, the sword intent was instantly obliterated. Chapter 2283. Inside the matchless ship, Chumu split his consciousness into 2. One was controlling the ship to fly rapidly towards the primordial spirit battlefield, while the other was paying attention to himself. The wound pierced through his chest, penetrated his heart, and came out from his back. The Flowing Light sword intent was left behind and was constantly causing damage. However, the power of the Great True Wheel was extremely tyrannical and forcefully destroyed the Flowing Light sword intent. Once the Flowing Light sword intent was destroyed, the self-healing ability was activated and the wound healed quickly. What made Chumu unhappy was that the Myriad Heaven 5 elemental swords were damaged to a certain extent. The Flowing Light translucent sword in the hands of the Flowing Light Sword Emperor was an upper grade, Great Emperor grade sword and was extremely powerful. That sword was unleashed by the Flowing Light Sword Emperor in anger, and its power was even more shocking. The Myriad Heaven 5 elemental swords weren't ordinary, but compared to the Flowing Light translucent sword, which was a top-notch sword, there was still a huge gap. Although the attack had neutralized most of the sword's power, it had also caused some damage to the body. Fortunately, the sword could recover on its own. However, it couldn't be used again in a short period of time. I shall refine the cold chalcedony first, and try my best to raise my cultivation level before going into seclusion to refine the light source. Chu Mu thought to himself. His plan was methodical. While controlling the ship, he refined the cold chalcedony. A few days later, Chu Mu returned to the primordial spirit battlefield. His speed was extremely fast as he headed towards the origin city. Behind him, the flowing light Sword Emperor's ship was also chasing closely. Seeing Chu Mu alight from the ship and enter the origin city, the flowing light Sword Emperor's face was extremely gloomy. Once he entered the origin city, he couldn't make a move. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire and he might be killed. Damn it! The flowing light Sword Emperor clenched his fists and was extremely furious. He felt as though a cooked duck had flown away. No, the light source is mine. Even if I have to pay a price, I must obtain it. With this thought, the flowing light Sword Emperor also entered the origin city rapidly. He wanted to find Chu Mu and obtain the light source through a transaction. As long as he could obtain the origin of light, he was willing to pay any price. After all, nothing was more important than breaking through to become a ruler. However, he did not manage to find Chu Mu. This was because as soon as Chu Mu entered the origin city, he immediately went to a place that specialized in secluded cultivation. He paid the clan merit points and used the secluded cultivation room with the highest level of security. No one was allowed to disturb him. Standing outside, Sword Emperor Radiance's expression was extremely gloomy. His hope was gone. His hope of breaking through to the sovereign realm was gone. With his own efforts, he didn't know how long he would need before he could find a suitable opportunity. Damn it! You are just a second step, Great Emperor. What use do you have for the light source? Sword Emperor Radiance's eyes were filled with killing intent. Wait, I will wait here for you to come out. After entering seclusion, Chu Mu began to refine large amounts of cold chalcedony. He no longer had to refine it drop by drop like before. In a few days, Chu Mu completely refined the 3 bottles of cold chalcedony. His aura fluctuated and became stronger. He directly broke through to the peak of the second step Great Emperor Realm from the high-level second step Great Emperor Realm. If the 3 bottles of cold chalcedony were given to other second step Great Emperor Realm experts to refine, they might be able to reach the peak of the second step Great Emperor Realm. However, Chu Mu was different. He was cultivating essence, chi, and spirit at the same time. Therefore, the amount of energy he needed was much more. I've reached the peak. After a little more training, my strength will definitely be comparable to, or even surpass, the average peak third step Great Emperor Realm expert. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was inwardly overjoyed as he felt the powerful energy in his body. Now, I should consolidate my cultivation and practice my sword skills. After spending 5 days consolidating his cultivation and practicing his sword skills, Chu Mu began to refine the light source. After absorbing the light source's energy, he refined it bit by bit. The All Heavens Sword Tao's origin rotated, and the light source's mysteries were strengthened. At the same time, a part of the light source's energy entered the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin, resonating with the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin and condensing the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin. In terms of mysteries, the light source's Grand Tao's light source was naturally superior to any of the elements of metal: wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice, and lightning. Therefore, it was more difficult to comprehend it. If it was any other time, Chu Mu would have to spend a lot of time to achieve this. However, with the light source's help, it was not difficult to achieve this step. In fact, it could be said that it was a piece of cake. This was a pure light source, a light source condensed by a minor sovereign realm expert. There wasn't the slightest bit of impurities, and it could be completely absorbed and refined without the slightest bit of waste. Chu Mu circulated the truth-seeking technique, and the Great True will rotated rapidly, refining the light source's energy. The great true will was like a millstone that could grind and refine all kinds of energy. Its refining speed was something that other Emperor Realm experts couldn't compare to. In the process of refining, Chu Mu's mastery of the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin increased, and his cultivation rose bit by bit. His understanding of the great Tao of light increased exponentially, and the All Heavens Sword Tao's origin was also condensing. Chu Mu's body was surrounded by white light, making him look like a luminous body. The white light did not look dazzling, but it was very bright. Moreover, it seemed to contain a trace of sharpness. The light that Chu Mu emitted fluctuated, and his aura rose again. He broke through from the peak of the second step Great Emperor Realm to the peak of the second step Great Emperor Realm. In other words, in terms of strength, the current Chu Mu was comparable to an ordinary peak of the third step Great Emperor Realm expert, and he might even be stronger. Not enough. This strength is far from enough, Chu Mu said to himself. With his current strength, he was not confident that he could defeat the Lightning Saber Emperor who had attacked him before, let alone those experts on the Earth Carnage ranking. He still needed a higher cultivation level, and he needed even more strength. There was still more than half of the light source's energy that had not been refined. Perhaps he could break through to the third step Great Emperor Realm. With such an indomitable thought, Chu Mu removed all distracting thoughts and focused on refining the light source's energy again. At this time, the All Heavens Sword Tao had already been successfully condensed. However, it had reached the level of a lower Emperor Realm, and it still needed to absorb more light source's energy to improve. The energy contained in this ball of light source was more complete, and it was not comparable to the fire source that Ancestor Scarlet Flame had left behind. Naturally, it would be more helpful to Chu Mu. However, the higher one's cultivation was, the more energy one needed to improve. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days had passed. The light on Chu Mu's body became extremely bright, and it looked like a small sun that was releasing white light. It completely covered Chu Mu's body, and his aura also skyrocketed, becoming more powerful. The seclusion room could completely isolate one's aura. Therefore, no one knew about Chu Mu's change. 15 minutes later, the aura that emerged from Chu Mu's body gradually stabilized and calmed down. The intense light around his body was also withdrawn, and all of it was absorbed into his body. Initial third step Great Emperor Realm. Chu Mu said word by word, and the corner of his mouth curved into a smile. Under the truth-seeking technique and the great true wheel, waves of tyrannical energy were flung out, and in an instant it traversed every part of his body like lightning. His cultivation had broken through to the initial third step Great Emperor Realm, and he had consolidated a part of it. However, the light source was completely refined. Although it was a pity, compared to the gains, Chu Mu was more happy. There is a huge gap between the initial third step Great Emperor Realm and the peak second step Great Emperor Realm. After crossing it, my strength should have become more powerful. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was sure that his current strength was definitely stronger than an ordinary peak third step Great Emperor Realm expert, and he could even compete with the experts on the Earth Carnage ranking. However, he did not know what level he had reached. Lightning Saber Emperor, Radiant Sword Emperor, the two of you, just wait. Chu Mu thought to himself. Although his cultivation had increased to the initial third step Great Emperor Realm, Chu Mu did not plan to leave the seclusion room now. It was a good thing to increase one's cultivation, but he needed to consolidate it. After consolidating it, he also needed to fully adapt to the sudden increase in strength. He needed to unleash every bit of strength to the extreme, and not overuse or underuse it. He needed to consolidate his cultivation and practice his sword skills. His right hand made a grabbing motion in the air, and white light filled the air. In an instant, a white light sword condensed, exuding a majestic and sharp aura. It was the All Heavens light sword. The All Heavens light sword's grade had reached the mid-grade Emperor Realm. Chu Mu had spent a total of 1 month in the seclusion room. Not only did he consolidate his cultivation, but he also familiarized himself with his new strength. He also familiarized himself with the newly condensed All Heaven's Light Sword and mastered a killing move. It's time to leave, Chu Mu thought to himself. After coming to the Yuan spirit battlefield, he had been under a kind of pressure. It was only now that he could breathe a sigh of relief. The current him was already considered to be at the peak of the Emperor realm. As for the Sovereign realm, it would be very difficult for him to reach it in a short time. Chu Mu stood up and walked out of the seclusion room. He had ended his month-long seclusion. This trip to the God's Relic had brought him great benefits that were indescribable. Next, I'll ask someone to refine the various spiritual herbs I obtained from the heavenly snow mountain into elixirs. This will further increase my cultivation and strength. Chu Mu thought to himself. Stop right there. Sword Emperor Radiance, who had been waiting for a month, saw Chu Mu appear. His killing intent surged, but he quickly restrained it. In a flash, he blocked Chu Mu's path. So it's you. Chu Mu looked at the person in front of him and smiled. It's me. Where's the light source? Hand it over to me. You can make some requests of me. Sword Emperor Radiance said coldly. He controlled his voice so that only the two of them could hear him. I used it. Chu Mu said. Impossible. You're just a second step, Great Emperor. How can you refine the light source? The Radiance Sword Emperor was enraged. Soon after, he exclaimed in shock, That's not right. Your cultivation has actually reached the third step Emperor realm. However, with such a cultivation, it's impossible for you to refine the light origin source in a month's time. Chapter 2284. The Sword Emperor glared at Chu Mu. Facing his doubts, Chu Mu just smiled and didn't say anything. He ignored him and walked forward. No fighting was allowed in the Origin City, even if it was a sovereign realm expert. This was a secret rule that no one could violate unless you were a demigod sovereign. The Sword Emperor obviously wasn't. Therefore, no matter how angry he was, he didn't dare to stop Chu Mu. Of course, if he was a demigod sovereign, he wouldn't need to fight with Chu Mu for a light source. He couldn't stop and didn't dare to make a move. However, the Sword Emperor wouldn't let Chu Mu go so easily. He followed closely behind Chu Mu. Wherever Chu Mu went, he would follow until Chu Mu left the Origin City. Chu Mu inquired about the alchemist with the highest attainment in alchemy in the Origin City. He brought along various spiritual herbs that he found from the heavenly snow mountain and found the alchemist called Nan Yi. Alchemists were usually very arrogant, especially those who were highly sought after by everyone. They were even more aloof and couldn't be easily met. Chu Mu wasn't considered much here. Therefore, he was rejected at the door. Give me the light source. I will ask the Nan Yi master to refine the elixir for you. The Sword Emperor seemed to have found an opportunity to say this to Chu Mu. Are you very familiar with Nan Yi? Chu Mu asked in return. I am ranked 37th on the Earth Carnage ranking. The Sword Emperor didn't answer the question, but Chu Mu immediately understood what he meant. You really want the light source, right? Since that's the case, let's go outside the Origin City and have a fight. Defeat me and you can get the light source. Chu Mu smiled. You want to defeat me and take my ranking on the Earth Carnage ranking. The Sword Emperor instantly understood Chu Mu's meaning. He smiled coldly and said with a murderous aura, I won't defeat you. I will kill you. As for Chu Mu, the Sword Emperor of Radiance already had the intention to kill him. Once he made a move, he wouldn't give Chu Mu any chance to escape. The two of them stopped talking and flew out of the Origin City. Soon they left the Origin City. The Flowing Light Sword Emperor was an expert on the Earth Carnage proclamation. There were many people who knew about him. Seeing that the Flowing Light Sword Emperor was actually leaving the Origin City with an unknown person and didn't seem to be very friendly, it instantly aroused the interest of many people. Let's go and take a look. Yes, let's go and see what's going on. When Chu Mu and the Sword Emperor left the origin city, over 100 people followed suit. This group was getting bigger and bigger. The Sword Emperor of Radiance frowned. He wanted to kill Chu Mu because he wanted to obtain the light source. However, he didn't want others to know about it, so as to avoid more trouble. However, he couldn't avoid the current situation. The longer the time dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. He had to obtain the light source as soon as possible. As long as he obtained it, he would immediately enter the origin city. With the origin city's protection, even if others knew about it, he wouldn't be afraid. Thinking of this, the Sword Emperor of Radiance ignored the others. When the two of them were a sufficient distance away from the origin city, they stopped. The Sword Emperor of Radiance, who was ranked 37 on the Earth Carnage Proclamation, was extremely confident in his own strength. This was also because not long ago he had chased after Chu Mu until he had to use all his trump cards. In the end, he was lucky enough to escape. Even though Chu Mu's cultivation had increased and reached the third step Great Emperor realm, there was still an obvious gap between him and the Sword Emperor. As for Chu Mu, he was sure that his current strength was much stronger than before and was enough to compete with the experts on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. However, he wasn't sure if he could defeat the Sword Emperor of Radiance because he was chased by the Sword Emperor of Radiance previously. However, he believed that the Sword Emperor of Radiance would be a good whetstone. 10 pierces of radiance. With a low shout, the sky-piercing radiance sword appeared in the Sword Emperor of Radiance's hand unknowingly. As he brandished the sword, he instantly pierced out. 10 pierces of radiance sword. 10 pierces of radiance sword. 10 pierces of radiance sword. The 10 pierces of radiance sword had the same trajectory. The power of each pierces of radiance sword was extremely powerful and could pierce through an ordinary third step Great Emperor Realm expert. This pierces of radiance sword pierced through the sky and shot towards Chu Mu at an astonishing speed. The radiance was extremely dazzling and everyone couldn't look straight at it. What a fast sword! Chu Mu was inwardly surprised. This should be the strength of the 37th ranked on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. However, he wasn't afraid at all. In his right hand, he had already condensed the Myriad Stars sword, while in his left hand, he condensed the Myriad Light sword. When facing the Sword Emperor of Radiance's 10 pierces of radiance sword, Chu Mu's figure flashed and dodged calmly. His 2 swords turned into 2 beams of light and attacked from the left and right. After his attack missed, the Sword Emperor of Radiance closed in on Chu Mu. The sky-piercing radiance sword was lethal, and the sword's speed was shockingly fast. It was incomparably sharp and could penetrate through everything. Countless sword light was densely packed and shot out like countless rays of light, enveloping every part of Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu's 2 swords danced and blocked every sword of the Sword Emperor of Radiance as he launched his counterattack. The true image of the Great True Wheel appeared behind his back. There was a total of 72 edges, and as it spun, it gave off a feeling of crushing the heavens and earth. Everyone who was watching from afar felt a sense of oppression. When facing Chu Mu, the Sword Emperor of Radiance also felt the same way. However, he was stronger and could still withstand it well. Radiant's sword burst. A sword thrust was incomparably ferocious. The power was world-shaking and instantly caused the sky to explode. The terrifying sword light was incomparably resplendent and no one could look at it directly. It exploded in an instant and swept out in all directions. The prowess was like the explosion of a sun. Chu Mu's expression changed. This sword made him feel a fatal threat. He brandished his 2 swords and shattered the beams of light. Third level of the 4-sided truth step, 1 breath's time. The battle was intense, and Chu Mu gradually understood his current strength. Indeed, he had completely surpassed ordinary 3rd step Great Emperors and could definitely be ranked on the Earth Carnage rankings. However, he still couldn't defeat the Sword Emperor of Radiance. After all, the Sword Emperor of Radiance was ranked 37 on the Earth Carnage rankings. He was very strong and could be considered an expert above average on the Earth Carnage rankings. It wouldn't be that easy to defeat him. 10th Sword, Radiance Sword Kill. Chu-Mu thrust out his sword. The sword light was like an aurora and pierced through the air. The Sword Emperor of Radiance was instantly shocked. He wasn't shocked by the power of this sword. Instead, he was shocked that Huang Xiaolong had actually grasped the Grand Tao of Light. Could it be that the light source was really refined by him? The Radiance Sword Emperor dismissed the thought as soon as it appeared in his mind. That was impossible. How could a mere low-level, third-step Emperor Realm expert refine the light source in a month's time, unless he had the help of a Sovereign Realm expert? Even so, 1 month was too short a period of time. If it was him, he would need at least a few years to refine the light source. After the collision, the Sword Emperor of Radiance retreated. However, the sky-piercing flowing light sword pierced forward. This sword was soundless and didn't seem to carry any powerful force. However, when the sword pierced through the air, it seemed as if the sword had entered the void. Chu-Mu felt a chill down his spine. An intense sense of danger enveloped his entire body. He could smell the scent of death. Without hesitation, Chu-Mu executed the 3rd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique. In a breath's time, he rapidly escaped from his original location. At the same time, the extreme sword light pierced through the void and pierced the afterimage left behind by Chu-Mu. Sky-piercing flowing light kill. This was the ultimate move of the sky-piercing flowing light sword. It was soundless and impossible to guard against. The Sword Emperor of Radiance had killed many strong enemies with this move. He actually dodged it. The Sword Emperor of Radiance was very surprised. His figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, approaching Chu-Mu. The sky-piercing flowing light, sword light, flickered and exploded. The space between Huang Xiaolong's eyebrows flickered, and 8 rays of sword light appeared. The 8th level of the immemorial sword seal. With 80% sharpness enhancement, Chu-Mu's strength became even more tyrannical. Both of his swords suppressed the Sword Emperor of Radiance. The secret art of the immemorial sword city. The Sword Emperor of Radiance was slightly surprised. I have a secret art too. Aurora Sword Chi. With a deep roar, a terrifying sword chi instantly exploded from the Sword Emperor of Radiance's body. That was a sword chi that he cultivated with a secret art. It was extremely tyrannical. Once he used it, the sword chi would penetrate through his entire body and strengthen his sword. The terrifying sword chi spread out in all directions and sliced through the void. Every sword that the Sword Emperor of Radiance pierced out was faster, stronger, and had astonishing penetrative power. The Sword Emperor of Radiance's original disadvantage was instantly reversed, and they were evenly matched. Who is this person? He can actually fight with the Sword Emperor of Radiance to such an extent. I have never seen him before. He shouldn't be someone on the Earth Carnage ranking. It is actually Brother Chu. When did he become so strong? Qin Shiyue, who was in the crowd, was extremely astonished. Thinking back, how long had it been? Could it be that Brother Chu had concealed his strength in the past? Qin Shiyue couldn't understand. No matter how hard he thought, he couldn't understand. This was because he didn't understand how talented Chu-Mu was. My current strength should belong to the top 40 of the Earth Carnage ranking. As Chu-Mu fought intensely with the Sword Emperor of Radiance, he silently evaluated his strength. As compared to the Sword Emperor of Radiance, there is still a gap. However, I still have a trump card that I have yet to reveal. Human Tao's true secret. After clarifying his strength, Chu-Mu didn't continue to tangle with the Sword Emperor of Radiance and immediately executed the Human Tao's true secret. 10% of his potential was instantly stimulated and turned into an extremely massive power. It surged out from the deepest part of his body like a tide and engulfed his entire body. It was like a torrential torrent that was endless and extremely tyrannical. Countless cyclones gathered around Chu-Mu and whizzed out. This was a representation of strength that exceeded one's body. A second secret art? This person can actually execute two secret arts at the same time. I originally thought that only the life and death Great Emperor could execute two secret arts at the same time. I didn't expect someone to be able to execute two secret arts at the same time. This person is unknown. Who exactly is he? He might have just come to the primordial spirit battlefield from the outside. Otherwise, it is impossible for us to not have heard of him. When Chu Mu executed the immemorial sword seal, many people recognized what secret art it was. Right now, the immemorial sword seal was still being executed, but he executed a second secret art. This caused a huge commotion. Most of the cultivators could only execute one secret art at the same time because they couldn't withstand the burden brought by the second secret art.